Today, we're going to be talking about some FNAF fan games that deserve another look. Whether you haven't played them in years or remember them as being nothing particularly special, revisiting these games can reveal just how much they actually got right. Some of these have aged shockingly well, so let's get into it. A plot twist is a literary technique that introduces a radical change in the direction or expected outcome of the plot in a work of fiction. Now tell me, can you think of a horror game that pulls off an insane twist? Maybe Resident Evil 8 in its crazy twist comes to mind. Now let me ask you another question. Can you name a FNAF game with a crazy twist? A twist so cool you have to sit back and think, wow, that was pretty sick. The game I'll be covering today has one of those twists, and I'm incredibly excited to share with you the amazing experience I had while playing Showman's The Awakening. For those of you already familiar with this game, you may know that it actually has a game that came before it. Kinda. Years ago, the same developer released a game called Phobia: The Awakening, using the Wiggles as inspiration for the characters. Well, turns out the dev wanted to remake their game using their own original characters to continue the story, so now here we are with Showman's. This may lead you to ask the question, if I've already played Phobia, is there even a point to playing Showman's? And trust me, this is a question I've asked myself. Originally, I saw people asking me to play Showman's. I played Phobia on my second channel, Dxtr Black, not knowing at the time that Showman's was a thing, learning soon after the first episode went up that it was in fact a thing. So I questioned, does it even bother to play it? Well, recently I've made the decision to do exactly that and give Showman's a try. And let's just say, if you've played Phobia, play Showman's. It's everything Phobia is and more. So join me as we quake our asses into Showman's The Awakening. In Showman's, we play as a guy named Mark Ward, an employee of Showman's Pizza Place. And in night one, we're introduced to two of the animatronics that will be trying to insert their fingers into orifices we'd really prefer they keep their grubby little hands away from. But before we can talk about them, we should talk about the tools at our disposal. Something really interesting you'll notice about the office is that you're able to look everywhere. Up, down, left, right, behind you, below you. It's actually really cool. It's really the first thing I noticed jumping into the game. The reason for this is actually because Showman's wasn't created in ClickTeam Fusion like most FNAF games are. Instead, it was created in Blender, which is what most FNAF games use to model their characters, and is something I also had no idea could be used to program a game. So that was pretty cool learning for the first time. Anyways, you'll see two large hallways on your left and right, which you can light up using buttons on your desk. In front of you is this lady. Hey, hottie. She's not hot, I'm not even gonna lie, she's not even bad. Who we'll be talking about later in the video. And if you look behind you, you'll be able to see the clock where you can tell how much longer of the night you have to get through. Oh yeah, and of course, there's cameras, because it really wouldn't be a FNAF game without those. With that out of the way, now we can talk about the first two threats this game introduces, Johnny and Harry. Now I know, those names aren't very normal sounding when thinking in terms of Five Nights at Freddy's, when usually we're having names so utterly stupid you'd be forced to think they were a fictional character. But no, these two are still robots, and you still cannot have intercourse with them, so please remove all thoughts of that nature from your head for the remainder of this video. Johnny and Harry both start from the show stage and do the exact same thing. Johnny will move through the cameras to your right hallway, and Harry will move through your left hallway, where they will then enter what I'm going to be calling their attack mode. During their attack mode, they have 5 phases. Each phase has a sound cue, and it's important that you're listening for them. With each phase, they'll move closer and closer towards your office, with the final phase having them walk up to you. Obviously, you can check their distance by flashing the light at them, and by doing so, you will also temporarily stun them in place. However, I would highly recommend you don't turn the lights on when they're in the hall, as I personally feel it's much more efficient to just let them attack you so they can piss off as fast as possible. Every time Johnny or Harry enters a new phase, their eyes will glow for a short time after their sound cue plays. So when you hear it, you can just turn in the direction to double check that they've moved. On these earlier nights, you really don't have to be super careful with them. Flashing lights and not counting sound cues isn't really important since they're your only threats. So I'll get into a bit of a better strategy for them later on. However, once they enter your office, you'll have to quickly throw on a spare mask to fool them into walking away, just like the animatronics from Five Nights at Freddy's 2. And that's really it. Night 1 is pretty damn easy, really just introducing the basics needed to understand two very important mechanics. After beating Night 1, we see a cutscene, something that was not originally in Phobia. In it, we meet with the founder of Showman's, Jason Baker. He confirms with us that only Johnny and Harry were active on our shift, and we confirm. Apparently, this should not be happening, and it's a known issue. So that's good at least. Jason tells us that a previous employee mentioned more characters moving, which in all honesty doesn't bode well for my anus, given the fact we still have 5 more nights of this to deal with. But we get our things and go home for the night, only to come back to work in the morning. Night 2 introduces 2 new animatronics, and let me tell you, this is where the game starts to show how much of a pain in the dick it's about to become. The first character we should talk about is the fine shite sitting in front of us, Peggy. Peggy reminds me a lot of the scrapped animatronics from Five Nights at Freddy's Pizzeria Simulator, just given the fact of the way she moves subtly like them. She also reminds me a lot of what Anissa's husband really doesn't want her to do to him. Whenever you're not looking at her, whether that be checking on the cameras, looking at the hallways, or checking the clock behind you, Peggy has a chance to advance phases. You'll be able to see her start by looking down and slowly transfer through the phases until she's ready to attack. In order to reset her, all you have to do is flip the breaker switch on your desk to shock her and she'll reset. But be careful not to just spam this lever over and over, because every time you shock her, she becomes more aggressive, leading to the end of nights becoming incredibly stressful due to how fast she'll be attacking you. Cap'n Cackle is the other menace introduced on Night 2. He is this game's Foxy. If you couldn't tell by looking at him, he's a pirate, just like Foxy. Also, he looks like he's cracked out of his fucking mind, zooted to the fucking moon. Seriously, look at this geeked out motherfucker. Holy shit, bro hasn't slept in 18 days. Look at those eye bags. What the hell happened? Stop looking at me, dude. Tell me that guy doesn't smoke crystal meth. Look at those fucking eyes. What are you doing? Hey. That's the face I make when I'm about to eat ass, bro. Anyways, similar to Foxy, he'll have several phases on camera 6. Watching him will slow his progression and even in some cases make him go backwards. If he happens to leave camera 6, he doesn't do exactly what Foxy does. Instead, he'll just start moving through your cameras like any other character would, albeit very quickly. If you manage to stare at him in one of those other cameras, he will go back to camera 6 where you can continue oogling at him to make him stay put. Both Peggy and Cap'n Cackle work very well together, and the same goes for Johnny and Harry. We have 2 other central characters left to introduce, and you'll notice that those 2 also work very well in tandem with one another. This is something I need to give this game praise for. It is so incredibly good at introducing new mechanics in a way that's stressful, yet engaging and fun. You introduce Peggy, a character that moves when you don't look at her, and Cap'n Cackle, another character who moves when you're not looking at him. And because these 2 characters are in different places, it forces you to learn how to balance them together. God, it's so fucking cool. Similar to last night, this night also has a cutscene after completion. In it, we're seen walking to the exit of the building. We hear a noise and quickly turn around to see an unknown animatronic staring back at us. It stares for a while before turning around and walking away. This is a character we haven't yet seen. Even the characters we'll be talking about on later nights can be seen on the cameras all the time, but this one can't. Keep him in the back of your head as he'll become important later. For now, let's move on to Night 3. Night 3 only introduces one character, but it also introduces another incredibly important mechanic, that being your vents. The animatronic introduced on Night 3 is Tony the Chef. He will enter your vents. You'll notice on your cameras that you have 3 camera vents. Tony can enter 2 of them, those being either camera 12 or camera 11. In these vents, he will have multiple phases he will move through before attempting to enter your office. With each movement, a very quiet sound cue will play, a stark contrast to Phobia where the sound cue was very noticeable. By double-clicking on a vent cam, you can lock the vent. Locking a vent uses no power because the game has no power to begin with. Praise God. Once a vent is closed, you can keep it closed as long as you'd like, with no consequences. The only downside is that you can only close one vent at a time. So this night really isn't all too different from Night 2. Well, now's the time when I want to talk about sound cue counting with Johnny and Harry. as it's this night where you'll probably want to start getting used to doing that. As I mentioned earlier, Johnny and Harry each have 5 different phases in your hallway. The first is when they initially enter the hallway. You'll be able to tell because you can see their eyes in the hallway for a brief moment, and because you'll be able to hear their big ol' feet stomping around, kind of like I want Toy Chica to stomp on my testicles. Once one of them enters your hallway, you can stop checking on them and focus on listening. Start a mental count of 3 in your head. All sounds in this game are directional, so that really helps. Whenever you hear footsteps on either side of you, decrease that side's number by 1. Once the counter reaches 0, you know that the next time you hear footsteps from that side is when they'll walk into your office to attack. Okay, 4 left, or 3 till he's at the last stage. 2 left until he hits door. Okay, 1 more. And he's at the line. He's walking the thin line. 1 more. I want to see how close I can cut it. Hi. Oh, yes. Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for that. Doing this while they're both attacking you at the same time can get a little overwhelming, and on later nights they do like to attack together a lot. But if you can nail this counting strategy, they really shouldn't be too much of an issue. After completing night 3, we get to watch another lovely cutscene. In it, we're looking through the factory for who the fuck knows what. We open a crate and find a Johnny plush inside. Seeing this toy seems to trigger some primal instinct in us, and we pass the fuck out. Honestly, bro, probably not the greatest place to lose consciousness, I'm not even gonna front. We awake in another room, only to look up and see Showman. Scared as shit, we wake up from our slumber only to realize it was a short dream we had after we had passed out. There is clearly something mentally wrong with our dear, beloved Mark. We just have to figure out what it is. Night 4 introduces the man himself, Showman. Showman works in perfect tandem with Tony, also attacking your vents. Although, unlike Tony, Showman can only attack your camera 13 vent. However, he also fucking loves to do this at the same time that Tony is jumping penis first into your vents. Showman only has 3 phases in the vent before attacking, so notably faster than Tony. So while both of them are attacking your vent, you really have to be counting their positions to figure out whose vent you need to close first, because once again, you can only have one closed at a time. If one of those fuckers get into your office, they're gonna crank that soldier boy and clock you in the jaw. I'm just gonna go ahead and put this on and hope to God. Okay, so it didn't work. I couldn't tell which one was closer, bro. I thought the guy I had blocked off was closer. I couldn't tell. All in all, each character is incredibly easy to deal with, but because of how perfectly they all work together, it can lead to an incredibly stressful experience trying to play against all of them at the same time. However, never at any point throughout my playthrough did I feel like this game was unfair or that RNG was too much of a factor. This game, dare I say it, might have borderline perfect video game balancing. After completing night 4, of course, we get another cutscene. This one taking place before we go to work for the night. Before we enter our car, we get a call from Jason, telling us not to come in to work tonight. He says things are getting too dangerous and that it would be unsafe for us to go through our shift. We agree to not go in tonight, except the plot twist is that I fucking lied and we're gonna go in anyways, because we hate authority like a 16-year-old white boy from the suburbs. On night 5, we get a call from the phone guy, and let me tell you, he is absolutely pissed that we decided to come in for the night. He explains that anything in that building that moves will be demolished in the morning. He tells us to do whatever it is we're trying to do and get out, because they're not going to send anyone into the building to get us out. Other than that, Night 5 is exactly what you'd think it is, just a much more difficult version of Night 4, really testing your reflexes and especially your nerve control. But on this night is when I have to bring up really the only problem I have with this game. Volume. This game is actually the loudest fucking game on planet Earth. Holy shit. Everything makes noise, and it makes a damn lot of it at that. There are typically ambient sounds in FNAF games, but for the love of God, this game plays intense music throughout most of the night, and it is loud as dick and balls. Want to hear the best part? As you get closer and closer to 6 a.m., the music adds more components and gets even fucking louder! This really doesn't help when so much of my strategy revolved around listening to sound cues. It's fucking crazy just how loud this game is! Now granted, was this something that was intended? Most definitely. And I'm not even saying that it's a bad thing, because obviously, inherently, it isn't. I was still able to beat the game just fine, and I feel like most other people would be able to beat it just fine as well. But this is something I couldn't not talk about. I love this game, but of course I'm not going to always be able to glaze everything I see, and I think this is truly the only flaw this game has. But hey, who gives a fuck about what I think? Let's move on to the cutscene, baby. Let me just say, I love this cutscene. I think everything about it is great. The pacing, the acting, everything is just so good that I don't want to ruin it by just talking about it. I'd much rather just show you.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, put your hands together for our birthday boy! Just leave me alone.
Well, god damn. We really should have listened and not come back, huh? So, it's safe to say that our pal Mark really got fucked here. Something I think is actually really cool. It's fairly common for FNAF games to have a character die in them, most commonly a phone guy, but to actually see it like this is just awesome. Going into night 6, we actually get a cutscene before the night happens rather than after it. In it, we play as the phone guy going into the building to get Mark. After a bit of searching, we find him, and once again, I think it'll just sit much better with you if you just watch it for yourself.
Mark? Is that you?
You shouldn't have went in there, bro. You shouldn't have went in there, bro. You shouldn't have went in there, bro. You should have done that shit. Oh, fuck.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
Oh, my God.
What do I do? Keep yourself together.
Are you fucking me? That's right. Turns out Mark isn't dead, but is just kind of possessed. Phone guy, or his real name, Matthew, runs back to the office with Mark on the pursuit, and night 6 begins. Night 6 consists of 4 threats, 2 of which we've already covered, Cap and Cackle and Peggy. However, you'll immediately notice that they both look pretty fucked up. Why is this? Well, turns out by demolish the animatronics, they really meant set the whole fucking building on fire. Because once again, it wouldn't be a FNAF game without a fire, right? Oh yeah, and of course, they are way more aggressive. Another thing you'll notice immediately is that we're stuck with the flashlight instead of the building lights. And let me tell you, as I'm sure you can already see, it is dark as fucking shit in this goddamn building with no lights. Of course, your flashlight has power, so you'll have to use it sparingly. You'll need to use it to check the hallways and to even be able to see Peggy in front of you. This honestly adds a whole new level of fear to this game, mainly with Peggy. I never got very good at telling when she switched positions, and to now have it where I can't even naturally see her just added a whole new fear factor, and I love it. The other two threats are the animatronic we saw in the post-night 2 cutscene, dubbed the Figure, and Mark himself, which is honestly one of the coolest twists I've ever seen. Having the character you've been playing as the whole time flip like this, it's insane. It's honestly one of the coolest things I've ever seen come out of a FNAF game. Let's start with Mark. Mark works the same as Harry and Johnny, except I feel like he's even easier. He can attack from either of the 2 halls, and unlike Johnny and Harry, you cannot see his eyes. He's also much quieter. The reason I think he's easier? Well, you don't have to do any mental counting to tell when he's going to attack, as he has a totally unique sound cue for when he enters your office. So as long as you've got fast reflexes, it's really just a game of waiting to hear the sound cue and putting on the mask. The final new threat on this night is, of course, the Figure. He takes the place of Tony and Showman attacking your vents. He can attack any of the 3 you have, since there won't be 2 characters going for the vents at the same time. Again, I honestly feel like this is easier than Tony and Showman. Of course, the Figure is fucking light speed fast when choosing and climbing through vents, so as long as you've got fast reflexes, it really shouldn't be too much of a challenge. Ironically enough, the main challenge I had with this night was not the 2 new threats, but the 2 returning threats, Peggy and Cap and Cackle. Again, these 2 have the best synergy out of any of the characters in this game, so bringing them back for night 6 was a no-brainer. Really, the actual problem for me was Peggy. The sheer speed at which she moves is enough to make you shit in your britches, and nearing the end of the night, she will be moving at a speed Usain Bolt would be creaming his pants over. But if you can control your nerves for long enough, you'll complete night 6 and move on to the post-night cutscene. Matthew runs as fast as he can to the exit, only to find it locked. Turning around, we see Mark slowly creeping up on us like the booty cheek creep freak. The screen cuts to black, and we're left with only the screams of Matthew echoing throughout the pizzeria, and Showman's The Awakening comes to a close. Kind of. We're not exactly done just yet. There's actually 6 other secrets this game has to offer, that being the secret tapes. On each night, you will be able to find one of these tapes and play them later. On night 1, if you check camera 9, you'll be able to see a tape on the shelf in the top left corner. Night 2's tape is located in one of the drawers in your office. Night 3's tape is located on camera 3 on a shelf in the bottom left corner. Night 4's tape is located on camera 2 at the top of the screen. Night 5's tape is located on camera 5 on a high shelf in the middle of the camera, and Night 6 tape is conveniently located directly in front of you on the desk. Hey there, post-scripting Deku here. Turns out I'm fucking wrong. These are not the locations of the tapes on every night. Turns out every single night, besides the 6th one, has a random location for each tape, each being on a different camera. This was just the order that I had. So, yeah. Sorry about that. These tapes, as I'm sure you could have guessed, go over some extra bits of lore to help us piece together the story. And this is the part of the video where I say, I'm very sorry guys, I'm terrible at talking about story, but I'm going to try my best here. Tape 1 shows all of the characters on stage singing the happy birthday song to a kid whose name isn't explicitly said. We can see by the date of the tape that this takes place in 1995. Tape 2 seems to be a sort of log from Jason, explaining his reasoning for why he believes the characters are acting so hostile. Originally, when they were first being built, they attempted to add an advanced facial recognition system that would allow the characters to actually see and think for themselves. Although the system never ended up working as intended, they wiped the idea from their systems. Well, guess what, fucker? Turns out they really didn't, and Jason seems to think that this is the reason the characters are acting the way they are. Jason makes a brief mention of an unnamed him and questions if one of his employees are potentially tampering with the characters. I'm guessing that him is referring to either Mark or the Figure. Tape 3 shows 2 guys working on Tony. They're talking about how these robots should be scrapped because of how old they are, and then the guy in the back says a sentence that I literally cannot for the fucking life of me decipher. Like many other things in this game, the static that plays during these cutscenes is so fucking loud I can't hear anything except it. I'll play what he says here, and if any of you guys can decipher it, please let me know in the comments.
That company's been up in deals with recently. Why?
Tape 4 is one of my favorites. It really gives off the FNAF VHS style that I really like. A maintenance worker is running a test on Cap'n Cackle. It doesn't quite go as planned as he bugs out, so they restart him and then get attacked. Afterwards, showing the lifeless corpse of the employee laying on the floor in front of Cap'n Cackle. It's just such an unnerving moment to see this in person. Usually when it comes to FNAF games and death, you don't see it. So seeing it in a game like this is really unnerving, and it adds a sort of realism to the actual events that are taking place. Tape 5 is probably my favorite of all the tapes, being the most terrifying in my opinion. In it, we're in the perspective of what sounds like a young girl. Hiding under a table, we hear a scream from another room. Shortly after, Johnny walks into the room and starts to look around. The girl accidentally makes a noise, and when she looks back up, Johnny is staring at her, and he quickly goes for the kill. This is such a fucking horrific and terrifying situation to think about being in, and I think that's why I like it so much. Just imagining being in the same situation makes my hair stand. Tape number 6 is an odd one. We appear to be being spoken to by the figure. He tells us that the birthday we saw earlier was Timmy's 12th birthday. He had 2 of his friends with him that day, and it was a party made specifically for him. Then we see 3 drawings of his friends, all of them sad. The figure appears in front of us and slowly glances up before the tape ends. Again, as I've previously stated, lore analysis is not my strong suit at all, so I really can't even begin to imagine what anything here means. I know robots mad and robots kill, and I think that is neat enough. Overall, Showman's The Awakening is such a big step up from Phobia, and while I still do love that game, I think I love Showman's even more. Amazing graphical upgrades, fantastic cutscenes, and a gameplay loop that's so fun, difficult, yet still not frustrating. This game really has it all, and I truly think it's a fantastic game to play if you're at all interested in horror games. Even if you're not a huge Five Nights at Freddy's fan, I still think you should give it a try. One of my favorite parts about making videos on this channel is picking out the games. I'll spend days playing random FNAF games, and most of them don't really catch my attention like some do. Some videos I've made on this channel were because of pure nostalgia, while others were made because I played something that I found amazing, and today is no different. The game I will be talking about today is called A Bite at Freddy's. I began playing this game like I would any other, and if I'm being totally honest, this might be my new favorite FNAF game I've ever played. I feel this game blows even Joy of Creation story mode out of the water. My god, it's so good. As much as I want to dive into this game right now, I have a quick announcement to talk about first. If you don't care about it and just want to get to the review, you can skip to the time you see on screen here. Recently, YouTube has started age restricting my videos because of my vulgar language. I think that's stupid, but whatever. So you'll notice that in this video and all future videos, all cuss words and other inappropriate words will be censored. This is not something I'm happy about. I don't like that I have to do this in order for videos to be pushed out, but it's what I have to do. So to compensate, I've made the decision to start a Patreon. Again, another thing I'm not very happy with, but it's what I'm doing. By joining the Patreon, depending on the tier you may choose, you'll get access to my content early, with no ads, and uncensored. And if you choose the highest tier, Dxtr Gold, you'll get your name mentioned at the end of videos. Blah blah blah, whatever Patreon stuff. There is absolutely no pressure whatsoever to join the Patreon. I personally don't care if it sits on 0 patrons until the end of time. This is just being made in case anybody wants to listen to these stupid videos uncensored and support me on the side as well. Again, no pressure at all. Don't worry about it. The link is in the description. With that being out of the way, let's get to the video. A Bite at Freddy's begins with a cutscene reminiscent of Five Nights at Freddy's 2, with us in the perspective of Freddy. We look around as 2 people talk about the new animatronics. We can look side to side and see Chica and Bonnie. And this is where I already want to pause and say how f***ing cool these characters look. This game went totally against what every other FNAF game does when it comes to designs. Rather than having the characters just look creepy and dingy in some stanky pizzeria, these characters are based off of Westernism, with each character having a big goofy cowboy hat. I love the change of pace. I also really like how the characters have really long faces. I think it's super unique in comparison to what a lot of other FNAF games create. But enough gawking, let's get into the gameplay. On night 1, which is really called Course 1, which I'm just realizing as I'm typing this, I should probably explain, so I'll quickly do that. Rather than having multiple nights, A Bite at Freddy's just has multiple courses that I could only assume means a meal course, since in this game, instead of having to survive until a certain time, you have to survive long enough to see 3 meals served. Let me explain a bit more, since I know that still doesn't make any sense. Unlike most FNAF games where you're totally alone, in A Bite at Freddy's, your manager is also working in the building with you. His job is to make all of the food, and your job is to confirm its delivery. You might be asking, what the f does delivery mean? And I'll explain it to you, even though you could just open a dictionary. Throughout the course of each course, odd sentence, but whatever, your manager will get a meal ready. Each meal has 3 stages they go through. Preparing, where the meal is being prepared in the kitchen, if you couldn't have guessed. Sending, where the meal is put on a conveyor belt and transported to different locations in the building. And delivered, where the meal has made it to a designated location and awaits confirmation. The next meal will not start being prepared until the last meal has been confirmed. There are 3 meals that need to be confirmed each night. The first meal will be delivered to Party Room A, the second to Party Room B, and the third straight to your office where you can collect it and eat it like a little piglet. To confirm an order, you have to go to the location where it was delivered, whether that be the camera or your office, and just click confirm. Then the next meal will begin to be prepared. Once you confirm the order in your office, you will complete the course. Course 1 introduces 2 characters, Talk Show Bonnie and Talk Show Chica. Talk Show Bonnie will move around the restaurant and will take one of 2 paths. Path A, he will make his way to the entrance of our office. Once he enters, you will be able to see him in one of 3 locations in your office. You'll have to shut off the lights in your office until you see him leave, where you'll then be free to turn your lights back on. I think this mechanic alone is pretty boring, but it's made much more interesting because Bonnie will attempt to hide from you in different locations. It's never hard to spot him, but if you're ever super focused on something else, which you definitely will be, it can be pretty easy to miss him. It's incredibly simple, but just makes the game that much more interesting. Path B that Bonnie can take leads him to the kitchen, which brings up a small point I want to mention. If you look at the kitchen camera, you'll actually be able to see your manager making the food, or you'll actually only be able to see his big goofy cowboy hat. I think it's pretty silly, and I also think it's a lot sillier that when Bonnie is in the kitchen, he chooses to completely ignore your manager. I guess the taste of my asshole is just so much more desirable. And of course, our manager pays no mind to the fact a murderous robot with no legs is right behind him, which actually brings up another point I have with these characters. Similar to Five Nights at Chuck E. Cheese, the characters don't have any legs. Since they're meant to always be behind something, designing legs would never make any sense from a design standpoint. But because these animatronics have no legs, they just drag themselves around, which, even if it's technically not as threatening as a 7-foot-tall, totally mobile robot is, it's totally much more creepy. Anyways, Bonnie will enter the kitchen camera and attempt to crawl onto the conveyor belt. On each camera where a conveyor belt is present, you'll have access to a closed door button. When pressed, if you're terrible at context clues, I'll piece this together for you, the door to the conveyor belt will obviously close. This poses a problem with meals not being able to be sent. But I never once had a problem with that, so I don't care. Once you close the door, within 3 seconds, Bonnie will leave the kitchen camera and you'll be free to reopen the door. You might ask yourself, why would I not keep the doors closed the whole course and only open them to let meals through? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I really needed a segue into explaining another crucial mechanic: power. A Bite at Freddy's does power much differently than other FNAF games do. In this case, you want your power low all the time. Performing tasks will cause the power to increase. These include closing conveyor doors, stopping the conveyor, which I'll explain more in a second, and turning off the lights for Bonnie, which, by the way, doesn't make sense. Why would turning the lights off cause power to be used? I don't know. Don't ask, and a few other things that wouldn't make sense if I brought them up right now. If your power ever reaches 100%, it will overheat, and you'll have to wait for it to slowly decrease back down to 0% before you can use any of the devices that cause it to increase. So basically, if your generator hits 100%, you lose, because there's a very small chance where that happens and you still beat the course. Anyways, getting back to Bonnie. Let's say you don't close the conveyor door and Bonnie hops on the conveyor. What happens then? Well, in that case, Bonnie will ride the conveyor all the way up to your office. There will be a noticeable sound cue when he does, or any other animatronic is doing this. When you hear them approaching, you'll turn to the conveyor and pull the stop conveyor lever. This will, as the name suggests, stop the conveyor and temporarily shine a light down it, where you'll be able to see the lovely death robot staring back at you. Just like the doors, after about 3 seconds he'll leave and you can let go of the lever. So this brings up an interesting balancing idea. Let's say your power is pretty high and you see that Bonnie is about to jump on the conveyor. You're scared that if you use the door, your power will go up to 100%, and you obviously don't want that to happen. You actually have some options here. You can either risk it and close the door anyways, or you can choose to allow Bonnie to get on the conveyor and stop him at your office later when your power has gone down to a more comfortable level. Considering that, once they hop on the conveyor, it takes quite a bit of time before they reach your office. When no power users are being used, the power slowly decreases. That's something important I probably should have mentioned earlier. But another important thing to note about stopping them in your office is that stopping the conveyor makes your power increase significantly faster than if you were to have just closed the door. So it's really something you'll need to learn to feel out while you're playing in order to make the smartest choice. Now, let's talk about the other character this course adds, Talk Show Chica. Chica works somewhat similarly to Bonnie, where she'll wander around the building and eventually choose one of two paths. On path A, Chica will head to party room B and attempt to hop on the conveyor like Bonnie does on the kitchen camera. Just like Bonnie, you may close the conveyor door, and then in around 3 seconds, Chica will leave and you can open it again. Path B, on the other hand, is very interesting and is one of my favorite mechanics in this game just because of how goofy it is. Like Bonnie, Chica's other path will have her head straight to your office. However, where Bonnie will hide, Chica will sit behind your desk. Along with a notable sound cue you will hear, you will also be able to see her big goofy cowboy hat slowly rising up from behind your desk. When you see her there, you need to, no joke, grab a toy gun from off your desk like this is Moosey, aim for between Chica's eyes, and fire a fake projectile at her before she fires her fake projectile at you. If you win the standoff, Chica will exit your office. This has to be one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen in a FNAF game, ever. I could talk all day about how much sense this doesn't make, but this entire game is super silly, so I'm not taking it super seriously here. I love this mechanic. I think it's unique and goofy. Should I call it goofy one more time? Have I put that in the script enough? Whatever. Let's move on. The second course of the game activates Talk Show Freddy, and with him comes a new camera and a new mechanic. This was super interesting to me. I've never before seen a FNAF game like this add a whole new camera to a night. This caught me off guard and I was very pleasantly surprised. Freddy, unsurprisingly, works similar to Bonnie and Chica. Again, he will wander around the building and choose one of two paths. I'm going to give you a quick spoiler alert. This pick-a-path system is the same for every character in the game, so I'm going to not bring it up for the remaining of the characters. Freddy's first possible path has him go to Party Room A and attempt to climb onto the conveyor. Just close the conveyor door, yada yada yada, you'll be fine. His other path, however, has him go to the new camera, which is Vent Camera. When you click on the vent camera, a few other lines will appear on the map, showing you which cameras have access to the vent, those being both of the party rooms and the hallway. I've actually never really talked about the hallway, but it will become more important later, so let me just quickly explain some small things about it now. The hallway in A Bite at Freddy's acts as a type of hub where you will be able to commonly see most of the animatronics. Multiple of the characters have a few different states on this camera, which can help you understand and be able to predict what their next moves will be. For example, Chica has a chance to appear on the hallway camera very far away. Looking at the layout of the building and where the camera is placed, you'll be able to tell that she is directly outside of your office door. So, If you can make time to catch a peek at that hallway cam, you'll be able to start a mental timer in your head for how long it will be until Chica enters your office, and because of this, you also know that she won't be attempting to hop on the conveyor in Party Room B. Anyways, back to Freddy and the vent. His second path also leads him to Party Room A, where instead of getting on the conveyor, you will see him climbing into the vent. After this happens, you will be able to hear a notable vent sound cue, alerting you to the fact he's up there and hotboxing your vent. When you hear Freddy in your vent, you must go to the vent camera and turn on the vent fan. This will cause a fan to drop down and block Freddy's path. He will then be forced to turn around, and after 3 seconds when he leaves, you can safely turn the vent fan back off. Turning on this fan works the same as a conveyor door, so it also increases your power. There is something really cool and really quirky and also a little bit skibbity about Freddy and this vent, however. In this vent, Freddy has 3 notable states. I'm not exactly sure how the game decides which state Freddy will be in, but he has a state far from the camera, close to the camera, and the final, very important state where he's very close to the camera and looking down into your office at you. When Freddy is in this peeping Tom state, if you activate the vent fan, it will actually chop Freddy's f***ing head off and it will fall into your f***ing office. What does this do, you ask? Well, when I was playing, I assumed it was just a funny little gag. The only thing I noticed was that without his head, Freddy was a little harder to spot on the cameras since the characters' heads are the most noticeable part of their bodies. What I didn't notice, however, and only found out while doing some extra research for this video, was the fact that when Freddy's head is off, his aggression increases dramatically. So much so that he will move from his start location to the party room and to the vent in a matter of seconds. And when you get rid of him, you will only have a few seconds until he's back. You know, with how many times I've lost to Headless Freddy, you'd think I'd have picked up on this, but I never did. I guess I'm just a fucking moron. Course 3 adds the most frustrating character in this whole game, Foxy. Foxy will start on a different camera from the other animatronics talked about so far. This is pretty standard when it comes to Foxy. However, for some unknown reason, instead of being Western-based like the rest of the characters, for some reason, Foxy is a scientist. What? Why? I fail to understand the thought process here. But whatever, that's not really important. Let's just go over what this goober does. Foxy's first path leads him to the kitchen just like Bonnie, where he will attempt to hop on the conveyor. What the f ever, you guys get it and don't care. Why is he frustrating is all you want to know. Foxy's second path leads us to the backroom camera, a camera that, at this point, has served no real purpose. In this camera, Foxy will have 3 states, each one bringing him closer and closer to some hanging wires, with the third state having him about to bite the shit out of them and kill himself. When Foxy is in this final state, you must press a button on that camera that will reboot the cameras. This also acts as a shock and will stop Foxy and move him back to the hall or main room. As far as I noticed, restarting the camera doesn't cause your power to increase, but it does make the cameras unusable for a small period of time. If you choose to not stop Foxy, which I wouldn't recommend, it's borderline game over. While you don't lose straight away, your camera's power will start to run on your office's generator, and as a side effect of that, every time you open your cameras to use them, it will increase your power, something it hadn't been doing prior. So while you don't necessarily lose when Foxy does this, with how much checking the cameras is necessary to beat any of the courses, you're basically f***ed. But after beating this course, you're actually done. Unlike typical FNAF games where you have 5 nights, A Bite at Freddy's only has 3. I definitely think this is an interesting approach, and also certainly helps with the game not feeling too repetitive, which, by the way, this game is great at making itself feel fresh all the time, but I'll get to that more later. After successfully fulfilling all 3 of these courses, we sit down with our manager and have a nice meal. Only thing that's a little off is we can see a twisted, malformed, deformed, crippled version of Freddy crawling near the table. That's when we're booted back to the menu and we see we have the option to do one final course. The final course acts as this game's 6th night, and it adds a brand new character, Threadbare. Lore-wise, Threadbare was an old Freddy robot they used to use, switching him out for a new model after a kid bit his face off in 1987. Are you kidding me? The bite of 87 in this game was committed by a child on an animatronic. That's hilarious. This game is so non-serious I love it so much. Anyways, what does Threadbare do? Well, as I'm sure you could expect, he acts similarly to Freddy. His first path has him go to party room B and try to hop on the conveyor, and his second path has him enter the vent through the hallway. The only difference you'll notice from Threadbare and the rest of the characters is that Threadbare actually has a third path he can take, that being going down to the back room where Foxy can go and immediately making you have to restart the cameras. He's not forgiving like Foxy is. Foxy has 3 stages, giving you ample warning to prepare yourself. When Threadbare enters your back room and reams you in the asshole while pulling your hair from behind, you need to immediately drop what you're doing and deal with his bullshit. But after beating this course, the game is over. Psych, fucking idiot, we still got custom courses to talk about. You might be thinking, why are you even talking about this? Custom nights are boring as and usually I would agree with you, but this game does something super awesome and I really need to talk about it, both to pad for runtime and because it's just sick. Similar to Five Nights at Freddy's 2 Custom Night, there are multiple pre-built custom modes to play through, but unlike FNAF 2, each mode in A Bite at Freddy's adds a unique challenge on top of the custom AI. Let's start with just beating the custom course on a totally random AI number, not all 20, not all 0, and not using a pre-built challenge. Upon beating it, you will be rewarded a yellow slip, which is pretty standard in FNAF games. It starts to get interesting when you beat the custom course with every character's AI set to 0, in which case you will be given a roll of toilet paper. This is incredibly stupid, but I love it. It's so goofy that this was even thought of. It's the small things that matter in games sometimes, and this proves that point. Now, let's get to the challenges, starting with Basket Hunt. Basket Hunt has Freddy, Bonnie, and Threadbare active. Bonnie and Freddy having an AI value of 10, and Threadbare having an AI value of 5. The extra challenge of this course is that, after a meal has been prepped, the basket it's in will be sent to a totally random room. You'll have to search through the cameras like a Where's Waldo in order to find each basket that comes through. Not only is this a super cool addition that the creator 100% didn't need to add, our manager can also be seen with a bag over his head. Since he claimed we were so good at working, he could do it without looking. Because of this, it's probably why the meals get sent to the wrong location, because he can't see where he's going. And on top of that, after beating the course, the final meal that gets sent to your office has a boot instead of food, because again, the f***er can't see anything. I think this is such a cool little extra cherry on top. The level of detail is so great, and again, wasn't even necessary. I love everything about this game. I actually don't have any complaints up until this point. The next challenge is Haunted Roulette, arguably the weakest of the challenges. In this mode, the characters active are Freddy and Chica with an AI value of 10, and Bonnie and Foxy with an AI value of 5. In this challenge, you get a unique item called the Shocker. Throughout the night, key tools you use may become haunted, those tools being your toy gun, light button, vent fan, and conveyor lever. Throughout the course, while you're being attacked, you'll have to keep a close eye on these tools and use your shocker on them if you notice they're haunted. If you try to use a tool while it's haunted, the actual tool will jump scare you, which is just fucking, say it with me, goofy. On top of that, beating the night rewards you with a haunted meal basket that, when grabbing, will also jump scare you. What a treat. Coming in the opposite of hot, we have the next challenge called Cold Kitchen. This challenge consists of Freddy and Bonnie with an AI value of 10, and Chica and Threadbare with an AI value of 5. In this challenge, the heater in the restaurant broke, and to compensate, our manager is wearing earmuffs, which you can see on the kitchen camera. How cute. But this course's challenge is directly affected by the cold. Not only is it f***ing snowing in the building, Jesus Christ, but occasionally it'll get so cold that you won't be able to do shit. In order to stop this from happening, you have to occasionally go to the back room camera and reboot the cameras. This again releases an electric shock, which I guess heats up the building. Doesn't make much sense, but f*** you, it's what we're working with. Upon beating this course, you'll be given a nice little snowman. The next challenge, called Out of Service, contains Freddy and Foxy with an AI value of 5, and Chica and Bonnie with an AI value of 10. The special, super cool, kooky, and funny twist being the conveyor doors don't fucking work. If you recall earlier, I said you're able to allow animatronics through the conveyor and stop them at your office later, and doing this gives you a good opportunity to think and balance your power. Guess what, lips? That can't happen here. If an animatronic gets onto your conveyor, you're f***ed,
because on top of the doors not working, the lever in your office doesn't work either, so you won't be able to stop a god thing. This mode led me to develop the strategy of only checking the kitchen cam, party room cams, vent cam, and back room cam, since the rest aren't very important. Eventually, I started glancing at the hallway cam just to see where Chica was and if Threadbare was going to be climbing into the vent soon, but I didn't start doing that until a later night I'll talk about in a second. Anyways, beating out of service gets you finger puppets of Freddy and Bonnie. What about Chica and Foxy finger puppets? I hear you bitching about. Shut the f up. I'll get there in a second. The next challenge is Lunch Rush, which has all 5 animatronics at an AI value of 10. The extra challenge of this night is that you have to confirm 7 orders when every other night you've only had to confirm 3. And with every animatronic at 10, this is a course where your nerves really start to get tested. And this is also the course where I started checking the hallway camera. After beating this course, you get a Bonnie clock. Why is it Bonnie? I don't know. Because rabbits are fast? I don't know. Get off my ass, man. I'm trying my best here. The final built-in challenge is called Full Course, which has all characters at an AI value of 20. This is just as you'd expect it to be, but something important to note, A Bite at Freddy's has characters activate in an order. Even with their AI values cranked up as high as they are, on Full Course, each character still won't begin moving all at the same time. Don't get me wrong, this challenge is still incredibly difficult, it just isn't incredibly difficult right out of the gate. Beating this challenge gives you the Foxy and Chica finger puppets you were bitching about earlier. By the way, I still have yet to beat Full Course. I know that I can, I just haven't had time to pour the attempts in needed to do so. Now, what if I told you there was a challenge even harder than Full Course? Harder than all 520 mode? Would you believe me? Well, you should, because I'm not just bringing this up for no f***ing reason. If, while in the custom course menu, you manually set all the characters' AI values to 20 and then start the night, you will enter max mode. It's very similar to Full Course, but with one major difference. Every character activates right at the start of the night. You might think that's not a big change, but I promise you it's noticeable. You may not notice right away, but as the game goes on, your power will slowly start to creep out of control. It's insane what making the characters start at different times can do in terms of balancing. It's crazy how much more difficult it is when played this way. Even though the characters are just as aggressive, with them starting at the same time, you'd think that they were f***ing at 21. But if you somehow manage to beat this challenge, you'll be awarded with a Fredbear finger puppet, which confused me when I read about it, because as we know, a Fredbear doesn't actually exist in this game. So who is this? My only possible guess is that Fredbear is just Threadbare before he got his face all eaten up on, but I guess I'm not totally sure.
Typically, when speaking about Five Nights at Freddy's games, a large part of the conversation ends up being about the lore of said game. And as I'm sure you all know, the stories of these games are usually incredibly dark, filled with murder, betrayal, and torment. However, not the game we're talking about today. In this video, we'll be talking about Chica's Party World Rebaked, one of, if not the most wholesome FNAF game I've ever played. From cute visuals, fun characters, all the way to a story that has nothing to do with dead children at all. There's a lot to unpack in this super fun experience, so join me today as we arch our backs into the world of Chica's Party World Rebaked. Chica's Party World does something before each night that I actually think is really cool. We get a task to complete, and we can explore and wander around the building before starting each night. So at 11 p.m., night 1 begins. In this game, we actually play as a robot security guard, not a human, which is adorable. I like to imagine our character looking like Rufus from Secret of the Mimic. Not that that's his canon name or anything, that's just what I chose to call him. It's our job as Rufus to keep watch over the entire restaurant using our built-in surveillance system. So our first task is to visit every single room in the building. This is when we get a chance to move through each room like a shadow over Freddy's. You'll notice that the building is incredibly dark. This would be because the lights are off, and being able to see anything does require light. So luckily for us, Rufus has been equipped with an LED that can briefly flash light to shine up the room. After using it, you'll have to wait a few seconds while the LED recharges to be able to flash again. We can explore every single room in the building, that is, except for one. If you are to enter the kitchen, you'll see there's a metal door. Hovering over it won't tell you what room is on the other side, and you'll be completely unable to interact with it. But after you finish exploring, we're ready to jump into the night section and start talking about the tools at our disposal. At the beginning of the night, we're able to detect a corrupted voicemail on Rufus. Listening to it, we hear an unnamed woman talking about one of the characters, Russell. Russell is Freddy, by the way. Not totally sure why he's given a different name in this game, but we'll roll with it. The lady says that Russell is very sensitive to bright lights, and that the people taking pictures of him with the flash on during the day disorients him, and it almost seems to physically hurt him. And because of this, he's always trying to go somewhere where the people aren't around. Before she can say much else, the voicemail becomes corrupted and ends. As I'm sure you could have guessed, Russell is the only threat introduced on this night. However, before we talk about how he works, we should talk about the tools at our disposal. To start, the office has two main directions you can be attacked from, the door and the vent behind you. We'll talk about the vent when it becomes important later, so let's just focus on the door. You'll notice that the door, well, has no door. So if anything walks up to our office, we'll have to use something else to keep them away. And that thing we'll need to use is that trusty LED we talked about earlier. You can flash your LED down the hallway to allow you to see if anyone is creeping around. Of course, since we're a security robot, we have remote access to all of the cameras in the building, and we can use them as fucking cameras. I don't know what you want from me, it's a FNAF game, bro. There's cameras, who would have thought? Russell is a pretty simple character overall. He'll wander around the various cameras in an attempt to get to your office. Look at that fucking hat, big ass hat, dude. It's such a big hat. Where did you get a hat so big? Where did you get that big of a hat? Once you know he's in your doorway, flash your LED at him and he'll go away. Now, this may bring up the question, if you can't literally see him in your doorway without flashing, how are you supposed to know he's there? Well, that question has a very simple answer. All you have to do is use the fucking cameras that you have at your disposal. Follow Russell around, and when he disappears and you're unable to find him on any camera, then congrats, he's probably at your door and you should flash him. However, later in the game, I'll tell you about a different strategy I developed for dealing with Russell, because he has an incredibly difficult synergy with another character we'll talk about later. But before we move on, I want to mention this game's art style because it is really unavoidable. This is easily the most unique FNAF art style I've ever seen. It's so low poly and brightly colored, but in no way does it look like those shitty copy and paste PSX horror games that are plastered all over itch and make it impossible for any indie developer to stand out. Please, for the love of God, stop making PSX horror games. Do something unique. Please. Fuck. But seriously, the pastel color palette is super different from a FNAF game, a genre where dark, I don't know where the fuck I am is kind of the norm. I can really appreciate when developers try something different, and I think this game nailed it perfectly. 11 p.m. night 2, and we're given a new task. One of the wires in Rufus's arm went to shit, so we'll have to repair it before the night begins. And with that, we're off to find something to fix ourselves. Before we talk about how to actually complete the task, we should bring up that, of course, this game has two endings, a bad ending and the true ending. I will be going over the true ending in this video because, no shit, that's the ending that actually means something. During every 11 p.m. section aside from the first, there will be something hidden around the building for us to find. Finding all of them will result in us achieving the true ending, and in Night 2's 11 p.m. segment, if you travel into the arcade, you can find a letter of termination from a woman named Heather Gray. It reads, "Dear Heather Gray, your employment with Chica's Party World will be officially terminated on June 21st, 2023. Reasons for termination include frequent disrespect of superiors, threats of violence. You will not be allowed to work tomorrow by any means, so make sure to collect your belongings today. Please remember to also review our confidentiality agreement as you are under an NDA and will not be allowed to disclose company trade secrets as well as practices and methods of operation. Chica's Party World is entitled to take legal action if you are caught violating these terms both before and after employment. Review of benefits to include health coverage of 401k in compliance with COBRA. Chica's Party World extends to eligible employees and their enrolled dependencies with the right to continue healthcare plan coverage for a specified period of time at their own expense and at full cost. Return of property. Please list and return any property of Chica's Party World that you may have in your possession. In addition, please provide any passwords and other information pertaining to accessing computer software and/or files. Your last paycheck will be received on June 21st, 2023. We wish you the best of luck in finding new employment, and we hope your experience has not been as regrettable as ours. Good luck. That last line is actually brutal as fuck. If I got this letter from an employer and they threw in that jab at the end, I'd probably just kill myself, bro. Heather Gray got fucking smoked so bad it's insane. I should also mention that Rufus claims he doesn't remember meeting this person, but that the name is familiar to him, which is interesting. Anyways, on to how to actually fix Rufus's boo-boo. If you head to the backstage, you'll be able to find some electrical tape. We use it to patch up our frayed wire and move our way back to the office to begin the night. The voicemail we're able to listen to on night 2 does give us some interesting information. The woman mentions how Top Hat, the Tiny Bonnie character, has been hiding in the vents and getting himself stuck. I find it interesting that these robots seem to be trying to hide away from the people in the building. The lady mentions that she spoke with Top Hat, and it's clear during this phone call that while these voicemails were being recorded, this lady was with somebody else at the time, and she mentions to this someone that they're giving her a weird look when she says that she talked to Top Hat.
I did talk to Top Hat about why he's... Yes, I talked to him. Don't give me that look.
Okay, Jesus fuck, sorry. But before she can elaborate more, the voicemail cuts out. I think this is pretty interesting. It seems like this lady has some sort of connection to some, if not all, of these robots. I wonder who she could be. Anyways, obviously Top Hat is the threat introduced on this night. And in all honesty, he's not a big hassle at all. As the voicemail would suggest, Top Hat really likes the vent behind you. So that's where he'll try to attack you from. He'll meander around the cameras, hop into the vent, and hop bottom straight towards your office. Now, I don't know if you guys know anything about vents, but I happen to know a thing or two about them. I happen to know that crawling around an event makes a lot of noise. That's why I have that one breaking and entering charge. Needless to say, I think she heard me in there. But that's not important. What is important is that you can also hear Top Hat when he's in your vent and about to attack you. When you hear him approaching, all you have to do is turn around and hold the vent door closed until you hear him bang on it like Foxy. Afterwards, you can reopen the vent. As of now, with only 2 threats attacking us, not much has changed from night 1. Just follow Russell around the cameras to know when he's in your doorway, and if you ever hear Top Hat in the vent, close that sucker and you'll be home free and ready to dive into night 3. Night 3, 11 p.m. time has finally arrived, and with it, a new task for us to complete. Rufus is having troubles connecting to the cameras, so figures the power may have been cut. Solving this problem is pretty easy. All we have to do is go into the dining area and reboot it. Simple sugar. However, as I'm sure you could have guessed, we have another piece of lore to discover as well. Remember that door in the kitchen that we couldn't interact with earlier? Well, after fixing the power, Rufus mentions that he hears something on the other side and goes to investigate. Upon doing so, we hear this.
I hear something coming from the doorway. Perhaps I should investigate.
No, we have to do this, Russell.
I know, but couldn't we just, I don't know, talk to them? Maybe they're friendly.
As much as I would like that, I don't think we have that option right now. We only have a few days left. Look, let's just keep trying for now. If we can't get through to them and it gets desperate, I'll take things into my own hands.
Well, Lowbite's helping tonight, right? Her temper's been nasty lately, but maybe she'll be able to get to them.
Oh, I can only hope. For the sake of all of us.
I should return to my station.
Well, apparently these animatronics are a bit more intelligent than they were led to believe. Russell was talking to an unnamed person about Lawbite joining us tonight, so we already know who the threat is going to be. If I had to guess who this person was talking to is, I'd probably say it's Chica, because that just makes sense. Anyways, let's go to the office. The voicemail we heard on this night is pretty interesting. The lady is talking about Lulbite, who apparently used to be called Tangle. However, when this is mentioned, she said that, quote, she wants to be called Lulbite now, end quote, which would imply that Lulbite told her this. She said that Lulbite is trying to be on her best behavior after what happened, so I can only assume that Tangle probably did some Bite of 87 style shit and now wants to be better, but I can't be sure. Obviously, Lulbite is the new threat introduced on this night, and she is bad news bears for our current strategy. While Lulbite moves around the cameras, her aggression will increase because you're not watching her. To make her anger go down, obviously all you have to do is follow her around the cameras and watch her. If it goes up all the way, you can guess what happens. Dead. Why is she such a problem for our current strategy? Well, of course, we're watching Russell all night right now, so adding a character that forces us to watch them is obviously going to be a pretty large problem. So, how did I change my strategy to prepare for this? Well, let me tell you. You know how we were watching Russell? Yeah? Well, I'm just gonna not do that anymore. I know, I'm a genius. All of my time on the cameras will now be poured into Lullbite, and at every opportunity I get to flash the hall with the LED, I will. Flash the hall, watch Lullbite until it recharges, instantly flash again. And of course, close the vent when I need to. Does this lead to needing to have luck with Russell? Yes, but it's also a lot easier on my poor little goblin brain. Oh yeah, I also lied because one other threat is introduced on this night. Coraline, Chica's cupcake. Very simple mechanic. Every once in a while she will appear on a camera and you will have to go find her. I want to die, I want to see one FNAF game without finding them on the cameras. That would be amazing. Anyways, when you find her, flash her, and if you don't, she's gonna fuck up your cameras and it'll be GG for you. Night 4, 11 p.m. That is what time and what night we are currently about to be speaking about. Anyways, the task on this night requires us to investigate a large crashing sound we heard in the building. But before we do that, oh hey look, a note on the table. On it shows a bunch of phrases scratched out with Gears Weld being circled. If I had to guess, Gears Weld is probably the name of a company that builds robots, perhaps animatronics. Continuing with our task, heading to the arcade will reveal that Top Hat is just chilling in the ball pit. Oh.
I won't tell you what to do.
Carry
on.
Carry on. That's not, I like that. I like that. Top Hat's playing around. Playing around in there.
After a short interaction with him, he dives back inside, and with our task completed, we head back to the office to be the night. There is one threat introduced on this night, and this is Silver Chicken, or as was originally going to be called, Spring Chica. She acts as more of a hallucination than anything you actually have to be worried about. And in fact, during this night's phone call, the lady mentions how she stopped programming its AI the moment that whoever she was speaking to told her to. So we can assume that she's been talking to her boss throughout this game. The way Silver Chicken works is pretty simple. She will randomly appear on the cameras like Phantom Balloon Boy from FNAF 3. Stare at her too long and she'll have intercourse with all of your tools, and the only way to avoid her is to obviously just not look at the camera she's on for too long. This brings up synergy with Lullbite, since you will be switching through cameras a lot trying to find her, but overall, Silver Chicken really isn't that much of an issue at all. Night 5, 11 p.m. Back to the coal mines for us. During this section, our task is pretty easy, and is technically the exact same as the wire fraying task. Our LED is broken and we need to find a replacement. Just like the wire task, head to the back room and install the new bulb and it's GG. The only difference in this task is that you obviously can't flash your LED while walking around the building until you replace it. However, before we head to the office, near the entrance of the building we can hear the phone ringing. Curious, we walk over to it, and when we answer the phone, we hear the following call.
Chica, there you are. Are you guys almost ready? I should be headed down in the next few hours. Make sure you have everyone with you when I get there.
Who is this? I suppose she had the wrong number.
Well, this is interesting. Clearly the person on the other end of the phone assumed that only Chica would answer it, hanging up immediately after hearing Rufus's voice. She says she's on her way, so who knows what that could mean. There's only one way to find out, and to do so, we first have to beat Night 5. I don't even want to explain the Night 5 voicemail to you. I think you'll enjoy it a lot more if you just hear it for yourself.
You wanna fire me? Fine. You can silence me, silence every single person who tells you the truth, but it doesn't stop it from being real. These machines are alive. You can argue all you want, they don't think, they don't feel, but no ordinary robot would ever show more compassion than you have as a leader. They're smarter than you think, I promise you that. You can't keep them here forever, and if they want out, they'll find a way to make it happen. And all things considered, I'm glad I won't have to be working for you when it happens. Sick.
So it's confirmed. These robots are alive and they want to leave. And come to think of it, the girl in these voicemails sure sounds a lot like the girl we just heard on the phone who said she's coming this way, and she was fired. I wonder if she's not coming to take these robots away. Before we can figure that out, we first have to talk about the final threat this game introduces, the main attraction herself, Chica. Something I quickly want to mention is how fucking groovy the music is on night 5. I wouldn't call this night a boss fight night, but the music really makes it feel like one. Chica works very similarly to Russell, except she is much harder to track on the cameras. If you ever find Chica on the cameras, she will quickly jump into the blind spot of the camera to prevent you from seeing her. So while you do know which camera she's on, when she hides, it'll be impossible to tell if she's there, which I think, while annoying, is really cool. It shows how intelligent these robots are. Her goal is to get to your door like Russell, except where when Russell reaches the crossroads, aka this T-shaped part in your cameras, he will immediately show up at your door. Not Chica. Chica will jump between the left and right cameras of the crossroads and at random jump into your doorway. So you most certainly will have to try your best to keep an eye on her. Once she enters your doorway, just like Russell, flash her with the LED and she'll go away. And if you can hold your nerves together for long enough, you'll beat night 5, and if you've collected all of the secrets during the 11 p.m. sections, we'll get this final cutscene. Through the past nights you've spent here, something starts to click in place within you. These robots aren't just company property like you have been told to believe. These are people. Perhaps they may not walk and talk and breathe the same way that humans do, but there is no less still a sense of kinship, a sense of living. You aren't as different as you were told to think. As you wander out of your station, you see them start to leave. One by one, the animatronics start to make their way out of the broken entrance doorway, aided by someone on the outside. You tap on the shoulder of Chica from behind, the last one to go out of the door, giving her a small jolt of surprise.
What? Oh, it's you.
It's by no means an unwarranted reaction, that of shock and a hint of disdain. You can't blame her too much. They reprogrammed you specifically to hinder her. I want to come with you, you say, much to her surprise as well. In fact, she seems rather speechless at the statement, but it no longer seems to be in spite. The silence is broken by their ally peeking in through the doorway, reaffirming the escape.
Chica, we need to go.
An equally stunned silence when she lays eyes upon you. Though her face is covered by a mask, you can still see her glasses and hair.
Well, I suppose you'll need to make room for one more.
Chica states. You know that voice. It's the voice you heard over the recordings. It's the voice of the person who constructed you. Your thoughts are interrupted by the pressure of a hug. It feels like overheating, but different.
Call me Heather. Let's get you home.
From this day forward, you were no longer a tool for a company that cared little for your existence. Instead, you fight for a new life alongside your newfound friends. You disconnected yourself from the mainframe, taking all previous security footage alongside you. You're going home. The news surrounding the incident states that no leads have been uncovered due to the substantial lack of evidence regarding the stolen property. All databases have been completely wiped, and most trails lead to dead ends. Chica's party world shows no sign of reopening in the near future. So, there we go. Undoubtedly the most wholesome ending to a FNAF game I've ever seen in my life. An ending with no death, no betrayal, just some lost robots wanting to leave the establishment they were trapped in, and an employee who actually cared about them helping to achieve that. We get the reveal that Rufus was made by Heather, and even in this moment she was able to allow him to come with, even knowing his original purpose. Chica's party world gave these animatronics feelings and true character, even in these final moments really making you care about them, even after being attacked by them for so long. This game's story is incredible. It's so simple and easy to follow, yet is in all honesty one of, if not my favorite story ever told by a FNAF game I've ever seen throughout my FNAF career. Overall, Chica's Party World is one of the most enjoyable FNAF experiences I've ever had. From the fun and engaging gameplay loop, all the way to the aforementioned phenomenal story and storytelling of Poisonous Pastels, incredible work. And if you'd like to hear another piece of interesting information about this game, Avocado Dreams was one of the main developers of it. No matter where I go, and no matter what I talk about, every time I really enjoy a FNAF game for any reason, it seems like Avocado Dreams had something to do with it, and I'm all for it. Please go give this game a try and show it some love, you will not regret it. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with me, or do you think this game is just too different to be able to be a proper FNAF game? I've covered several overwhelming FNAF games on my channel before, and I'm sure I'll cover many more in the future. Today is no different. I've recently stumbled across a fan game dev by the name of Solar Neon, responsible for Late Shift at Nintendo World, which is in a video I've made recently with a very good song along with it. Well, call me surprised when I found out that Solar has actually been working on an entire series of FNAF games, and that 2 of the 6 of them have already been released. Knowing that, I couldn't help myself but get sucked right in, and now I'm going to force you to be sucked in as well. Today, we're going to be talking about Swing Shift at Farley's, a FNAF fan game with some of the darkest and most sinister storytelling I've ever seen. Before we start talking about the actual gameplay loop this game has to offer, I first want to talk about the stylistic choices of this game. Something I noticed is that Swing Shift at Farley's really feels like FNAF 1. A lot of games try to replicate the style and feel of FNAF 1, but I honestly don't think many are capable of doing it. Farley's is definitely one of them. The overall look and feel of the game really reminds me of the original Five Nights at Freddy's, which makes the game feel nostalgic. I love it. Anyways, moving on to talking about Night 1. There is plenty to talk about. Look at the length of the video. Again, the person that made this game also made Late Shift at Nintendo World, so you know we're about to see some of the most creative shit you've ever seen in your entire life. To start, there are a lot of places you're able to move, but before we go down the list talking about them, describing the doors is very important. Swing Shift at Farley's doesn't use a typical power system, which I love. It makes my dick not feel like it's on fire. However, the doors do have their own type of power system involved. When a door is closed, the door's fuse will quickly decrease. If it empties completely, then obviously the door will be forced open. So that bodes the question, what the fuck are we going to do about that? Very epic answer, I will say, and this brings up probably my favorite mechanic. As I said, there are multiple rooms you can go to from the office. Turning to the left door, you can turn once more and go to some weird back room area. I think this is a hallway. Then, turning once more, you can go to a storage room. Inside of this storage room, you can grab a new fuse. But of course, it's not just as simple as grabbing the fuse, as there is a minigame you have to complete first. A bar will appear at the bottom of your screen, and an arrow will slide back and forth. You have to time and click when the arrow is in the middle of the bar 3 times in a row for you to be able to pull out the fuse. I guess we have to really put our backs into picking up this fuse that probably weighs as much as all of the food in your mom's fridge combined. Get it? Because a fuse is very light, and your mom's fridge is empty because she ate it all? Yeah, you got it. Directly behind you while looking at the camera monitor is where your fuse box is located. You can remove an empty fuse and replace it with a new one you grabbed. However, the fuse has to be empty before you can replace it. So this will lead to you having to forcefully make your door run out of power at times. But that will make more sense once we start talking about the actual threats this night introduces. Speaking of which, let's do that now. Night 1 only introduces 2 threats. However, they both go on to serve a very important purpose. So let's talk about Basil first. Basil is this weird fucking dog thing. His goal is to attack your left door. He will make his way through the cameras and eventually make it to your door. However, something interesting you'll notice about Basil and your hallways for that matter is that they have no lights. So you won't actually be able to see Basil at your door, nor does he make a sound cue informing you he's there. So that poses the question, how are you supposed to know he's there? Something about Basil, and every animatronic in this game, is that unlike characters from some other FNAF games, they will never move backwards. So once Basil gets to his final camera before attacking, once he leaves that camera, you know for a fact he's at your door and you need to close it. This leads to you needing to constantly watch the cameras to track the characters, something I've noticed a lot of other FNAF games are unable to do without adding a music box or finding them on the cameras mechanic. See, fellow game devs, this game is proof that you can find an interesting way to use the cameras that isn't those 2 things. Basil will bang on the door when he leaves so you can open it again. In general, 1 fuse usually lasts about 2 attacks from characters before you should let it run out and replace it. Charlie is the next character introduced, and she does literally the exact same thing as Basil, except she attacks your right door. Not much more to say about her. Night 2 introduces 2 new threats, each of them doing something different, adding a lot more stress to this game. It's during this night I noticed just how hard this game was truly going to get throughout the later nights. Because even just on night 2, you're already getting dogpiled, and the reflexes and balancing skills you'll need drastically increase. The first and most recognizable threat added is Florence. He is the Foxy equivalent of this game. He is in fucking jail. No, I'm not kidding. He's literally behind bars. Throughout the night, he'll make his way through several phases before bum rushing your office like your mom bum rushed the cafeteria in her school years, canonically revealing that she's had this terrible eating habit all her life. Of course, watching him on the cameras will slow him down, but with several other characters that will require you to also constantly be watching them, it's safe to say that you won't be stalling him nearly as much as you can stall Foxy, as you do actually have to be looking at him. Unlike Foxy, Florence can attack whichever door he wants. And also, as far as I'm aware, there's no way to force his attack to happen earlier. With Foxy, you could check the left hall, but there doesn't appear to be an equivalent for Florence. What you'll have to do is listen to hear which side his footsteps come on and close the respective door. This brings up a synergy with Basil and Charlie. As I said earlier, each fuse has enough power to block 2 attacks, maybe 3 if you cut it really close, which I wouldn't recommend. So having Florence attack a door that only has 1 attack left, and then noticing that Basil or Charlie is about to attack that door will really get your blood pressure to rise as you quickly whip around to do that quick time event minigame to get a new fuse. I love the stress this character brings, I can't lie. The final threat this night introduces is Dominic. He brings on an entire new mechanic into this game. In your office, you'll now see that you're able to look up. Doing so, you'll find a vent. Hooray! I can't wait to see what this asshole is about to do. Dominic appears in the same camera as Florence. When he decides he's going to try to get to you, he will move to the back room. On this back room camera, you will see a new pop-up at the bottom. It's a heater for the vent. I'm sure you can see where this is going. When Dominic leaves this backroom camera, it means he has just entered your vent. However, that doesn't mean you should blast the vent just yet, as after you use the heater, you'll have to wait for it to cool down. And just because Dominic is in your vents doesn't mean he'll be combated by the heater just yet. This is the point in time where you'll need to constantly check the vent above you to see if you can hear him banging around inside of them. If you don't hear him, don't blast him. When you do hear the banging, this is when you should go to the camera, charge up the heater, and activate it. You do have to be looking at the vent to hear the banging, so don't think you can just avoid looking up, because unfortunately, you cannot. Night 3 is a doozy, adding 1 new threat that in turn adds 1 new mechanic, enough to make everyone's urethra begin to leak blood. So let's talk about her. The threat that Night 3 introduces is Whitney, and Whitney introduces your flashlight. I bet you can already guess what she's going to do. Whitney has 3 avenues she can attack you from: your left door, your right door, and the vent above you. She will wander around the cameras and eventually pick one to attack. When she is at one of those locations, you have to spam your flashlight at her until she goes away. However, something you may have wondered, and no, this flashlight does not work how most FNAF flashlights tend to, as this one is much worse. The rate at which the battery drains from this flashlight is a lunacy. So, to compensate, you're able to charge it back up. But how do you do this, you might ask? Well, on the cameras, you will see a new pop-up. Using this pop-up, you can slowly recharge your flashlight. The problem with this? Obviously, aside from the fact that it's just a fucking music box, which I hate, is that the camera in which this pop-up is on teleports to a random camera whenever it damn well pleases. Did you just fucking hear me? The music box mechanic, aka my second least favorite mechanic of all time, is a find them on the camera mechanic, aka my number 1 least favorite mechanic of all time. This fucking charging flashlight pop-up is the combination of my 2 least favorite things, and they happen at the same goddamn time. You can't make this shit up, bro. When I first saw this, my penis instantly wilted like a flower and died. Fuck me. And that's not even the end of it, as Whitney behaves in the same way as Charlie and Basil. There is no sound cue for when she arrives at any of the 3 places she can arrive, and you also can't tell if she's there without flashing your light, which I've already explained drains way too quickly for you to just be flashing it all willy-nilly. So you have to track her exactly how you have to track Charlie and Basil. There's not even a crazy amount of characters, yet this is quickly becoming one of the most stressful FNAF games I've ever played. And don't even get me started on how stressful this game gets when you go about replacing your fuses. you will be spending a majority of your time staring at the cameras, especially on later nights when the characters are moving pretty quickly. So having to spend a fuck ton of time grabbing the fuse and replacing it will guarantee that you lose track of literally every character you were watching. It's so stressful, and while I'm not a huge fan of being stressed out, if you could believe that, I do still think it's really cool how this game is able to pull that off. Night 4, and again, just as Five Nights at Freddy's did, Night 4 introduces the big bad antagonist himself, Farley. And let me tell you, he's honestly probably the least threatening character this game's seen so far, with a mechanic that makes him sound a lot scarier than he really is. Let's talk about it. Farley works in the exact same way as Charlie. The goal is to make it to your right door. However, the big catch with Farley is that you can't see him on your cameras. And of course, we already know we can't see door characters at our door. So how do we know where Farley is? Well, every time that Farley moves, he will laugh, which by the way, if you were curious, is just FNAF 1 Freddy's laugh. You will have to keep track throughout the night of how many times Farley laughs, as every 5th laugh will signal that Farley is now at your right door and that you need to close it. And this is where this game introduces a mechanic so cool, yet so useless. In your office, you will now see you have a little notepad. Using this notepad, you will be able to leave little tally marks. Now, why would you need to leave little tally marks? Well, this is this game's way of letting you keep track of how many times Farley has moved so you don't have to just remember. Every time you hear him laugh, open your notepad and mark a line. Once you deal with his attack, switch to your eraser, erase it, and start again. I think this is super cute and unique. I've never seen a FNAF game do something like this before, as most would probably prefer you just remember it yourself because that's way more AIDS-inducing. However, the way the rest of this game controls does bring up an issue with this otherwise awesome mechanic. I have 2 hands, in case you weren't aware, and on my 2 hands, 5 fingers are attached each. What's stopping me from counting Farley's movements on my hand? Doing this is actually a much better choice in my opinion, since it eliminates the time it would otherwise take to drop the camera, open the notebook, mark it down, close the notebook, and then reopen the camera. I think there's a very simple way to solve this problem and further encourage the player to actually use the notebook. All you would have to do is make another mechanic use a keybind. For example, instead of Whitney and the QuickTime event to get the fuse being controlled by the mouse, why not bind both of those systems to your control key? That way the player will have one hand on the mouse and the other on the keyboard most of the night, making it so that using the in-game notepad would make much more sense since you wouldn't have that open hand. I think the idea of the notepad is super nice, and while totally unnecessary, I think if it was encouraged in a more natural way, it would actually be one of the most interesting mechanics I've ever seen in one of these FNAF fan games. But as it exists right now, I just don't see any real reason to use it. Night 5 doesn't have a whole lot to talk about, really just being a much more stressful version of Night 4. On my playthrough, which by the way you can watch over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, there was a point where I had to pretty much get 2 fuses in a row because I got unlucky with attacks. Honestly, one of the most stressful moments I've ever had playing a FNAF game. It was so cool. One interesting thing I do want to talk about on this night is the lack of a phone call. Just like FNAF 1, on Night 4, the phone guy gets beamed out of existence by an enemy. On Night 5, if you check the back room, you can see what I can only assume to be the phone guy with his head on an endoskeleton body. If there's one thing about Solar, the developer of this game, she does not hold back on the shock value of her games. That's what I love so much about them. Night 6 time, here we are. Spoiler alert, there's pretty much nothing to talk about, except 2 things. To start, there's no new threat. Night 6 is just a harder version of Night 5. However, if you look in the back room, you'll notice that the corpse is now missing. And this time around, we actually get a phone call. I'm not going to explain it because I literally can't, so just take a listen. Now you might be asking, Dxtr, what the fuck was that and why did you even show it to me? Well, dear viewer, if you reverse it, you'll hear the following, which I've added captions to. For those of you wondering what any of that means, at the time of writing, I have no idea. And by the way, that inaudible line, I'm gonna need your guys' help with that. Let me know what you think it means. I even reached out to the game's creator, and even she told me that she forgot what the line said. So that's just awesome. But I'm not quite done talking about this game just yet. No, I found something interesting hidden inside of the game. On camera 9, there is a 1 in 10,000 chance for a character by the name of Midas to appear, acting as this game's Golden Freddy, even using the same laugh and hallucination sound as him. He enters your office and his jump scare plays. I'll just let you see it for yourself. So yeah, that's disturbing. As mentioned, that character's name is Midas. I have no idea who this character is supposed to be. However, I do know that we will be finding out, as Solar Neon plans on creating 6 games in the Farley series, and I'm totally looking forward to them. There are still a few more secrets I was able to uncover. In the room where you grab a new fuse box, you'll notice a stack of papers on the ground. Upon picking the papers up, you will see one of the following 3 papers. The first shows a wanted poster for a man inside of what appears to be a bunny costume. It's only a police sketch, but we can see they're wanted for murder. The second paper reads, "Bodies found in local river." In a shocking turn of events, the body of missing boy Thomas Fiver has been found under a bridge in Shantytown. According to the Utah Police Department, Thomas's body was stuffed inside a garbage bag with his head removed. The head has still not been recovered. A note addressed to the police was also found with Thomas's body, written by the Guillotine Killer. This has been revealed to be his 3rd victim. The Guillotine Killer, possibly giving a name to the killer in the previous paper, obviously being called that name for decapitating his victims. Another kid killer. Fantastic, but what did we expect, I suppose? And victim number 3. I wonder how many there are in total. The 3rd paper reads, 6 children now reported missing. Over the coming weeks, 6 children have vanished in Shantytown, Utah. While 2 of the missing children have no leads, it is believed that they are further victims of the infamous Guillotine Killer. Utah Police Chief Edward Cal has stated that they are expecting letters from the killer soon, potentially tying the 2 other children to his spree. Police are hoping to apprehend the killer soon. Well, that answers my question. 6 children this time around. Quite the hefty number, but nothing compared to my 12, but that's not important. What is important is that I lied and there's actually 1 other paper to be found. However, the only way you can get it is if you've been attacked by Midas. So, 1 in 10,000. Your chances aren't great, but lucky you, I'll just show you what the paper is. So it appears Midas came from another restaurant by the name of Midas's Galactic Pizza Palace. Also on this paper, you can see some possible other names for this character, being able to make out Mike, Monty, and Max. As you can tell, this is a napkin, clearly showing that this was a very early idea for a restaurant, even having multiple food ideas like burger and barbecue before settling on pizza, apparently stating that burgers are, quote, too easy to fuck up. And then of course, the sketch of Midas with his absolutely fucking massive veiny head. Disgusting, by the way. So, with the 5 other confirmed games on the way, there's still a lot to unravel this time. And you better believe I'll be here to cover it when it comes around. But as far as I'm aware, that's all Swing Shift at Farley's has to offer. Overall, I think this game is easily one of the most creative pieces of fan game work I've ever seen. Solar Neon is so open to trying new and unique things, and I love that. I'm super looking forward to the other 5 games, and I can't wait to cover them on Dxtr Black, and of course, over on this channel. Hold up, guys! As I was working on this video, the 2nd game in the Farley series, Swing Shift at Farley's Jr., actually released. And I thought, well, why not add that game to this video as well? So instead of ending the video right here where I was about to, let's go ahead and jump into Swing Shift at Farley's Jr. So, this is kind of awkward, isn't it? I bet you were getting ready to click off the video and now we have a whole nother game to cover. Well, be grateful, I guess. Farley's Jr. starts with a very FNAF 2 style opening. We're sitting in the POV of who I can only assume to be Farley. We can look left and right and see Basil and Charlie accompanying us. Shortly after the minigame ends, we're booted to the main menu where we can see the toy animatronics. What the fuck? Like, these things literally look like the FNAF characters, but rest assured, they are not. Upon starting the game, we're greeted by a newspaper. stating that this time around we aren't monitoring a restaurant, but an entire mall. Awesome. That doesn't sound like there's about to be a metric fuck ton of characters, now does it? Night 1 has a phone call that's like 5 fucking minutes long, and I'm not going to waste my time talking about it. It's your typical Night 1 bullshit, and he explains the characters we'll have to deal with. But of course, if I just let him do that, then I wouldn't really have a job, now would I? So let's start by talking about the tools at our disposal, because there are a hell of a lot more this time around. To start, let's get the obvious out of the way. We have a Farley mask that we can use. However, you may notice the 4 buttons inside of this mask. Don't worry, we'll talk about them in a bit. You can also use your camera to flash the hallway in front of you for a short period of time. However, every time you do, you'll lose 1 film reel. Throughout the cameras, you can find film reels lying around and pick them up. Also in the cameras, you can flash and hold your light on them so that you can actually see, which is very nice. You may also notice music box symbols on a good majority of the cameras. Don't worry, we will also talk about that in a bit. But that's really it in terms of mechanics that actually matter at this point in time, which means we can move on to talking about the threats this night introduces. Night 1 introduces a whopping 4 threats, already matching pretty much the entire crew of the first game, so this is about to get scary. The first ones we'll talk about are Basil Jr. and Charlie Jr., these being the toy variants of the originals. The reason I mentioned talking about both of them is because they both literally do the exact same thing, so no point in talking about them individually. If you couldn't guess because you have a brain deficiency, their goal is to make it to your office through the big hallway in front of you. Since this hallway in front of you is so dark, you won't actually be able to see them if they're there. However, there are 2 things you can do to verify if they are. To start, you can obviously flash the hallway with your camera and check. However, if you don't want to waste a film reel, there is another way. Characters in Farley's Jr. will not move backwards, so once they make it to the hallway camera, if you ever see them leave that camera, that guarantees they'll be in your hallway. So once you know they're in your hallway, all you have to do is put your mask on. Except, as I'm sure you could have guessed, the buttons don't work like a normal FNAF mask. Upon a character entering your office, their eyes will glow 1 of 4 colors. Depending on which color they are is which color you'll have to press inside of the mask. Once you do this, their eyes will switch to another color. Repeat this process until you've pressed 4 buttons and they will finally leave your office. I don't think I need to explain to you how fucking awesome this is. Solar Neon was able to take one of the most overused FNAF mechanics of all time and add a twist to it that makes it feel new. Does it make a whole lot of sense? No, not really. But it's still really fucking awesome and I love it. The next threat this night introduces is Farley Jr. He works in the exact same way as Basil and Charlie Jr., but with one very frustrating difference. Remember how in the first game Farley would hide in your blind spots? Yeah? Well, Farley Jr. does the exact same thing, except this time around, he doesn't make sound cues when he moves. So that brings up the very appropriate question, how the hell are you supposed to know where he is? Fantastic question that is. If you look at your cameras, you'll notice a large tracker button at the top. Whenever you click that tracker, it will show you which camera Farley Jr. is currently in. However, every time you use the tracker, you have to wait an entire century to be able to use it again. This is literally the only way to tell where Farley Jr. is, so you'll have to get pretty lucky with your timings of this, especially on later nights. With the juniors out of the way, we can move on to the final threat that Night 1 introduces, that being the marionette. Oh boy, I promise you this thing is way worse than you could ever imagine. Of course, this marionette uses a music box mechanic. However, the music box is located on the desk in your office, so you don't have to open your cameras to use it, which I honestly thought was great. But is there a catch? Are you retarded? Of course there's a catch. There's always a catch. The marionette can move throughout the night. The way she moves? Take a fucking guess. Exactly! At random, she'll make a sound cue signifying that she's teleported to a random camera. Another find them on the camera mechanic mixed with a music box mechanic. All right, fine. I've liked everything Solar Neon has done so far. Maybe if I look deep inside my cold, dead heart, I can find it in me to look past this. Maybe. When the marionette moves, you'll have to find which camera she went to and toggle the music box to said camera using the music box button I mentioned earlier. So while yes, you can wind it from your office, you're still not free of the worst fucking mechanic ever thought of by man. So, that was a lot to introduce in one night, and we've still got 4 or 5 more of these to go. To discover how bad it's going to get, stick around, because I get the really funny feeling that the further we jump into this game, the further my sanity is going to split. Oh my god. I don't even know what to say. Here we are on night 2, and this night is really going to show just how fucking difficult this game is about to be. This night introduces several new threats, all of which make me want to stitch my asshole shut so that I can never shit again. Let's waste no time and start talking about them. Tonight introduces the withered characters, literally every single one of them. Well, except for one, but we'll talk about that asshole a little bit later. To start, let's talk about Withered Basil and Withered Charlie. I'm going to talk about these two together because just like their junior variants, they both fundamentally do the same thing. On night 2, you'll notice in your office you can now pull 2 gates closed on both sides of you. These gates are important for these 2 threats. Withered Basil and Charlie's goal is to get to your office through these gates. Basil will attack the left and Charlie will attack the right. Just like seemingly every other character in this game, you won't be able to see these two while they're at your doors, so you'll have to track them on the camera to be able to tell when they've disappeared to them. Once you know they're at your door, close their respective gates and wait to hear them hobble away. You know when I said their goal is to attack these doors? Well, I kind of lied because they both have one other form of attack, that being the hallway in front of you. Both characters will appear in the hallway camera. When they disappear, they will do one of 2 things. The first will be moving to a side camera to make their way to their gate. The other will be moving to your hallway just like the juniors do. When you know they're in your hallway, all you have to do is flash them and they'll go away. These 2 characters alone already add a bunch of stress to this gameplay loop, especially with them being able to attack in more than one way. But we're still not done. We have yet to talk about the final threat this night introduces, the Jailhound. Jailhound is an incredibly frustrating character, mainly because he forces you to use 2 means of defense against him, both draining a crucial resource and wasting a lot of time. Jailhound can only attack through your main hallway. You'll know he's there because thankfully he'll start talking to let you know that he is there. The first thing you'll need to do is flash him, using up one of your film reels. Then, and only after you flash him, must you put your mask on. If you put the mask on beforehand, he'll kill you. This is explained by the flash disorienting him enough for the mask to fool him. Pretty interesting explanation, I will admit. Once you put the mask on, he'll enter your office for a short period and leave. Unlike the juniors, you do not have to play the Simon Says minigame inside of the mask. So yeah, a metric shitload of stuff thrown on top of you on only the second night of the game. And let me give you a little spoiler. There's a lot more characters that are going to be added to this loop. And with each one, years of my life are plucked away like nose hairs. I only want to die a lot, guys, don't worry. But I'm not quite ready to move on to night 3, as during my playthrough of night 2, which you can see over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, I of course died a few times trying to beat night 2 as I got used to everything. One of those times that I died, I actually got thrown into a death minigame. So let's talk about that. In this minigame, we play as a girl named Crystal. We go to the house of a man named Mr. Martinez, which, judging solely based on the color of his dialogue tech, I'm going to assume he's this game's William Afton. Crystal asks if Terrence, who I can only assume to be his son, is around, as he hasn't been answering messages. Martinez says he's been locked inside of his room after what I can only assume to be a supposed incident. Crystal apologizes about someone named Toby, and at this point, we're not totally sure who that is. Martinez allows Crystal inside to go see Terrence, but when she goes to his room, Martinez is seen pulling out a syringe and following after her, clearly showing that he's about to do something terrible. The only question we'll be left with now is why, and who is Crystal? But with that, we're ready to move on to night 3. With night 3 coming along, we have even more characters thrown onto our shoulders, and I'm really not excited for it. We have another duo group of attackers that pretty much do the exact same thing. So let's talk about them first. These 2 characters are Balloon Boy and JJ. Yeah, that's right. Solar made JJ an actual threat in this game rather than just the Easter egg that she is in FNAF 2. Let's talk about Balloon Boy first. He will make his way to your left gate. Of course, like every other character, you won't be able to see him in your doorway. However, you won't have to watch him on the cameras either, as every time he moves, he'll make a sound cue. And the second sound cue he makes will signal that he's at your gate, and that you either need to close it or put your mask on. Either will make him go away. JJ is identical, except she attacks the right gate instead. Now, I mentioned these two were slightly different, and what they do if they get into your office is how they're different, since neither of them will actually end your run directly. If Balloon Bitch makes it into your office, he will quickly leave, but not before taking every single film reel out of your camera, forcing you to have to go through all of the cameras to find more. And at this point in the game, you really don't have the time to be doing that. Now, if JJ gets into your office, she'll do something so foul, I'm trying to hold back the vomit from spewing out of my mouth just thinking about it. If JJ gets into your office, she'll steal your fucking mask off the table. She will then teleport to a random camera in which you'll have to fucking find her and click on her in order for her to return it to your desk. Oh my fucking god, that is literally the most evil thing I've ever seen a character in a FNAF game do. Oh fuck. Oh, she took the fucking mask. I'm cooked. I didn't know she took the mask. I thought that sound cue from JJ was her. I thought the sound cue from JJ was her leaving. It was not. It was her grabbing my shit. She copped me. She copped on my shit. I'd rather JJ kill 6 more children than take my shit. I'm being honest. Oh, but guess what? We're still not done because there's still 2 more threats to talk about. I know I said 3 at the start of the night, but these 2 characters are basically 1 character, which is why I'm saying there's 2 more. These characters are Candy Cadet and Astro. The fuck me silly, backwards, forwards, upside down, flip me, bend me combo. Let me explain it. So, you'll need to watch camera 10 to see when either of these 2 leave. It's important you know who leaves first. If Candy leaves, he will approach one of your gates at random. You, of course, will not be able to see him at your gate without either flashing your camera or watching the cams to see when he enters. He also makes no sound cue either, so that's great. Once he's there, you'll need to close the gate until he leaves. However, shortly after Candy Cadet attacks, Astro will attack the other door shortly after. Now, you may be wondering why I mentioned how important it is for you to know who leaves camera 10 first. Well, that's because if Astro leaves first, he'll do something a bit different. If Asshole leaves first, he too will go to either of your gates. However, when he's at your gate, he'll start singing. You need to close which gate you hear him at until he leaves. And of course, when he does, Candy Cadet Hole will soon attack the other side. These 2 add so much more unnecessary stress to this game, and Solar Neon knew exactly what she was doing when she made this. Asshole. Before we move on to night 4, I want to talk about another death minigame I got while working on this night. It's literally an exact copy of the Give Cake minigame from FNAF 2. The only major difference is that we play as Farley instead of Freddy, and instead of a random crying child, we see a girl come to the entrance who in the programming is named Charlie. Soon after, a car pulls up to the building and a man in a bunny mask gets out. Now, while I would imagine this person is probably Martinez, I do have to point out that in the code, this character's name is Guillotine. And if you remember from the first game, is the name of the serial killer. So it appears we get to see the abduction before one of his many murders. But with that, we can move on to night 4. It got worse, guys. Let me tell you, it got so much worse. Way worse than I could have ever imagined. Not only does Night 4 add 2 more characters, but it also adds a brand new mechanic that makes this game far more stressful than it already was. To start, let's talk about the new mechanic, being able to turn off the power to the building. I bet you can take a solid guess where this is going. When the power is off, you obviously can't check your cameras. However, you can still put your mask on and close your gates. With that in mind, now on to the 2 threats this night introduces. Let's start with the simplest one, Mangle. Mangle has 2 ways of getting into your office, the big hallway in front of you, and the vent that's on camera 9. I've neglected to mention this vent up until this point, because Mangle is the only character to interact with it. Plus, you can't even see or interact with this vent in any way regardless. When you see Mangle in your hallway in front of you, you'll have to shut the building's power off. She'll swoop into the office for a few seconds and then leave, wherein you can then turn it back on. The vent is pretty much the same, but since you can't see the vent, the way you'll know you have to shut the power off is when you hear her in your vent. Turning off the power throughout the night when watching the cameras is so integral to this game's cycle is absolutely brutal. And the final character introduced on this night doesn't help with that at all. Withered Farley is the last character introduced on night 4, and he serves to be one of the most stressful yet. Once Withered Farley makes a successful movement opportunity, he will teleport directly to your main hall. Every time you flash the hallway, you'll be able to see him. Throughout the night, he'll slowly creep his way towards your office, and once he enters, as I'm sure you could have guessed from my intro of him, you'll have to shut the building's power off until he leaves. Mazel tov! I want to die. This is every single threat in the game. And let me tell you, completing this night was honestly one of the hardest challenges I've ever put myself through. And we're not even on to night 5 yet. So I'm really not excited for all that. But there is still one thing I want to talk about before we move on to night 5, and that's another death minigame I got while playing night 4. In it, we play as an unknown character seemingly on a camping trip with another unknown character. Child number 2 wanders off and we go to follow him, only to go deeper and deeper into the forest as we lose track of him. When we find him again, we see him trapped in the back of someone's car as it drives off. Maybe got some inspiration from the FNAF movie, just a hunch. Shortly after, Farley jump scares us. And this leads to a small theory that I have. I get the feeling that for each of these minigames, depending on who jump scares us at the end of them is meant to hint at who the stolen child in said minigame would go on to possess. Just a hunch, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. Anyways, on to night 5, and I'm really not excited for it, I can't lie. Thankfully, night 5 doesn't bring anything new to the table. I thank God for that every day that I wake up, because he knows better than anybody how I would have lost my mind had there been more animatronics added on this night. However, there is something very interesting to note about this night. 1, I never got a death minigame like I was hoping for, but that's fine. And 2, something very interesting happens once you complete the night. I'll let Dxtr Black take it away. Subscribe, by the way. Ooh! Oh! I need to relax. Wait, what? Mangle still kills you? What the fuck? That's right. Mangle kills you. And when reading the newspaper after the fact, we see that we've been playing as Jeremy Fitzgerald this whole time. Wowee! I'm leaking. What? But with the information of our player now being dead, who's to say what's going to happen on night 6? I'm not sure, and I'm very, very excited. Night 6 is pretty interesting, so let's just jump right into it. To start, we're now playing as Mr. Martinez, both the man who was holding the syringe in an earlier death minigame we talked about, and the man I suspect to be the guillotine killer. In our phone call, we actually get to hear the conversation between Mr. Martinez and the phone guy, and I think listening to it for yourself will be much better than me describing it to you.
Fancy seeing you there, Mr. Martinez. And on a night like tonight.
Why are you interrupting my night, Gretchen?
You tell me, Vincent. Poking around my mall, and during an active investigation, no less. God. You know, I gave you a lot of time. More than I've given most of my vendors. But no. First your hunks of metal fuck with my staff. Then those kids go missing. The cops start ripping my business up. That poor Jeremy kid gets his head smashed in by one of your freaks. The one you told me you would fix. And I now find you there, doing God knows what.
Now what is that supposed to mean?
Oh, I think you've got a pretty damn fine clue.
Are you threatening me, Gretchen? I'm not sure baseless accusations are a good look for you.
Then let me make it simple. If you're not out by the time I get there, I'll throw you out myself.
Is that right now?
Yeah, it is. Want to know why? Because I've been in this business long enough to know what scum is. Whatever mess you've made, I want it cleaned up. Otherwise, the police might be expecting a little tip soon.
I think this further adds to my confirmation that yes, Mr. Martinez is 100% the guillotine killer and this game's Afton. This night really serves to be a much harder version of night 5. However, to my surprise, one new character is actually added, that being Midas, the secret character from the first game. He acts in the exact same way as Golden Freddy does in FNAF 2. Occasionally, when you drop your monitor, he'll be in your office. If you don't raise your monitor again fast enough, he'll kill you, easily becoming the most frustrating character in this game in my opinion, as the crazy amount of shit going on is already hard enough to keep track of in your head, but adding this bullshit guy on top of it really serves to make my head explode. However, it did lead to my crazy completion of night 6. Fuck, I'm dead. What? Holy shit! Tell me that's not the craziest completion you've ever seen. Yeah, I thought so. But with that, Farley's Jr. closes down due to a bunch of bullshit that was completely expected, and Swing Shift at Farley's Jr. comes to a close. At least, that would be the case if we didn't have a bit more lore stuff to talk about, since with Midas actually showing up, I'm sure you could have assumed there's some stuff I was able to find. To start, by going into the extras menu and checking out the characters, moving over to the withered characters, you'll actually see missing posters for each of them, adding to my theory of depending on who jump scares you equating to who the dead child possessed, with Garrett possessing Farley, Charlie Emily possessing Basil, Terrence Martinez and Crystal possessing Jailhound, and an unknown person possessing Charlie. Why is this unknown? Well, because I never actually got Charlie's death minigame. But let's go take a look at it, shall we? In this minigame, we play as Susie Rosa. We walk around town until we eventually stumble across our dog, dead in the middle of the road, clearly being hit by a car. Shortly after, a car pulls up next to us and the guillotine killer steps out, telling us that he can fix our dog if we get in the car with him. And I'm sure you can imagine what he does to her next. And speaking of minigames, there's still plenty to cover. Let's rapid fire through the minigames I never got in my playthrough over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, starting with the minigame called Riverbed. We play as an unnamed little boy in the rain. We walk past the place where Susie's dog was killed, and continuing forward, we see the guillotine killer dropping the body of presumably one of his victims in the lake before he is then attacked. And if you remember, this is probably his third victim, which was referenced in one of the papers in Farley's 1. The next minigame is called Save Them. We play as Withered Farley as we follow the marionette through the building. She spells out save them as we travel, but before we can get to the exit, the killer steps in and smashes the marionette to pieces. And finally, we have Late Night, a minigame that's really just a cutscene. We watch a mother talking on a payphone while her daughter is clearly trying to get her attention. Eventually, she wanders off, only for us to see the killer's car whiz by, presumably, I would imagine, hitting her with it, although no sound cue is heard to indicate that. The mother goes to look for her, and then we get jump scared by the marionette, which would tell me that this little girl would go on to possess her. Oh yeah, there actually is another minigame that I got, I just didn't mention it for some reason, so I'll mention it now. It's called I'm Sorry. This one is also just a cutscene, and in a much different style from the others. A boy is sitting in the hospital with Mr. Martinez. They're watching the corpse of an unknown person completely wrapped in gauze. Looking back at Martinez, we see this unsettling image. And with that, that's all of the cutscenes in this game covered. However, we're still not quite done talking about stuff I was able to find. To start, there are several newspaper articles to read just like in the first game. Each appears at random when you click the paper stack in your office. They read, Marvelous Mimic Man. The winner of the 1995 Henton's Robotic Fair has been announced to be Vincent Martinez's Marvelous Mimic Man. This robot won due to its impressive state-of-the-art AI that allows it to near perfectly mimic the actions and poses of anyone around it. Vincent Martinez, the proud creator of the Mimic Man, has made a statement on winning first place. I am honored to receive this award. Thank you to the judges and especially the voters who made this happen. I hope to show you more of the Mimic Man and other creations like him soon. Farley's closes its doors. Lawsuit from Showbiz Pizza Time Incorporated closes down beloved family restaurant. After a long and grueling trial, Showbiz Pizza Time Incorporated has won its lawsuit against New Edge Incorporated, the owners of Farley's Fun Zone. The lawsuit alleges that New Edge Incorporated not only plagiarized multiple of its characters, but also stole confidential blueprints and schematics for their animatronic mascots. As a result of New Edge losing the lawsuit, they have been ordered to pay Showbiz Pizza Incorporated $3 million in damages. While New Edge has yet to make a statement, their decision to shut all of their 10 Farley's Fun Zone locations has sent a clear message. Obituaries. Abigail Leslie Emily, September 5th, 1954 to July 30th, 1985. Abigail was born on September 5th of 1954. She grew up in a lovely house down north before moving to Utah and marrying a brilliant husband and having a lovely daughter, both of which were unfortunately taken away from her too soon. Abigail tragically killed herself on the 30th of July, 1985 via a self-inflicted gunshot to the head. We hope that Abigail is in the warm light and with her husband and daughter. So, a robot that can mimic people made by Martinez, a plagiarism lawsuit for blueprints and schematics, and a woman who tragically killed herself, each with something redacted. And of course, after getting killed by Midas, there is an additional paper you can read. Tragedy at Midas's. 10-year-old boy bitten by animatronic. This afternoon at Midas's Galactic Pizza Palace, one 10-year-old boy, Tobias Martinez, was bitten by one of the establishment's animatronic characters. It was reported that he was shoved inside its mouth by 4 children who have yet to be identified. Police have not yet confirmed if this is a murder attempt or freak accident, although they are still investigating. Tobias is reportedly in critical condition, with his frontal lobe nearly severed. The owners of Midas's New Edge Incorporated have yet to make public statement on the matter, aside from suspending all operations at the restaurant. Tobias Martinez was bitten and killed at Midas's. I wonder if this isn't the person we see in the hospital bed in the I'm Sorry minigame, as this is clearly this game's equivalent to the Fredbear bite. And since we're drawing parallels, let's draw another one. In the weird phone call all the way in Farley's 1, the first line mentions a riverbed. And what do we see in one of the death minigames? That's right, the guillotine killer throwing a body into a riverbed. Whose body this is, though? No other than Thomas Fiver, Martinez's 3rd victim. But with that, as far as I'm aware, is everything that the first 2 Farley's games have to offer. I'm incredibly excited for the rest of the series that Solar has planned, and she's actually shown me a sneak peek of the 3rd game. I'm obviously not going to spoil anything, but it looks crazy. Overall, both of the Farley's games are clearly heavily inspired by the original FNAF games, and even seem to be following the original pattern and story these games laid out. And I honestly really like it. The Five Nights at Freddy's formula. Arguably what defines a FNAF game in the genre of a FNAF game. You're stuck in a small space, you can't move, and several threats are trying to eliminate you as you use a small amount of tools to defend yourself for an arbitrary amount of time. This, in a nutshell, is Five Nights at Freddy's as a genre. However, there are some Five Nights at Freddy's fan games that don't follow this formula, and if it wasn't for the use of the characters from the original game, you would have no idea that they were even FNAF games to begin with. And maybe you can think of a few games like this. The game I'll be covering today is another one of those games, a game so unique, so good, that if it didn't use official FNAF characters, it could easily be its own fantastic survival horror experience. So sit back, strap in, and join me today as we cover Fredbear and Friends Reboot. You can honestly think about Fredbear and Friends Reboot as more of an Outlast, Resident Evil, or Poppy Playtime style game, purely in terms of how it plays. It's a story-based, free-roam survival horror game, except it uses characters and settings from the Five Nights at Freddy's universe, and it's honestly super cool. We play as a guy named Thomas. When this game takes place, the Fredbear and Friends restaurant had been closed for over 26 years, and together with our friends Chris, Ashley, and Richard, they all decided it'd be a great idea to do some urban exploring in the now abandoned building, not knowing that they were about to walk into a sick and sadistic death trap, the likes of which they'd never experienced before. We drive to the restaurant where all of our friends are waiting and head inside to find them. We all talk about what the plan is, and it seems like they don't even fucking have one. So like, why are we even here? No matter, we decide to all split up like Scooby and the gang to explore faster, something I would never agree to do because this building is so dark I can barely see 10 feet in front of me. So, to solve the darkness problem, Richard finds the power room as we enter the office of the building. Successfully turning the power on, I ask the question, is it even possible for a building 26 years abandoned to even be able to have power? That's a genuine question, by the way. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but like, who's paying that bill? The city? I have no idea. After having our fun in the office, we meet back up with our bald friend Chris. I know being bald isn't a crucial plot point, but a plot point I found relevant to point out. Like, imagine being bald. Couldn't be me. I have luscious locks. Bald bitch, loser bitch, boy, loser bitch. Chris tells us he wants to continue exploring to find out more about this place, which I call bullshit on because this bald loser is sitting down and is actually not exploring a damn thing. Heading back to the office, we find 2 documents for Chris since he's too lazy to go look for himself. One of the documents mentions the animatronics acting up, and the other talks about an armed man in a purple suit. I wonder who that could possibly be. We go back to where Chris was, only to find him missing. After exploring around, we realize we can't find Richard or Ashley either. We hear a voice in the distance yelling to get away, and later hear what sounds like Richard getting attacked.
What the fuck?
We decide to say fuck our friends and run to the exit, only to find that the door is somehow locked. We decide we need to go hide in the office since there's a door we can close to keep ourselves safe. As we run down the hallway, we run into Chris. Relieved, we go to greet him, only to watch him get snatched from something hiding in the vent on the ceiling, pulling him up into the ceiling and tearing him apart.
Yeah, not this way though, not fucking that way, no we ain't.
We obviously turn around and go to the other entrance of the office since I'm not about to get ganked like Chris just did. As we go to the other hallway, we can hear loud metallic footsteps following behind us. We quickly hide under the desk and hope that whatever is following us is retarded. We watch as a crooked spring Bonnie limps through the office, unaware of our location. We come back up only to hear a ring of the phone on the desk. We answer the phone to be greeted by some douchebag using voice mod like those guys that go on Valorant to flirt with any female over the age of 10.
If you want to survive, listen very closely.
He tells us how to survive each of the 8 animatronics. The fucking 8 goddamn cock-sucking animatronics. My god, that is a lot. I'm not going to explain every single animatronic at the same time right now because that would be boring as fuck. And trust me, this phone call was also boring as fuck. The big thing that we're told is that Fredbear is scary, and he's the reason why one of the doors to the office is broken. So fantastic, we have a door that doesn't work. What exactly are we supposed to do? I have no idea. I have no direction whatsoever aside from let's go see if I can break the exit door down. But before we can try anything, we're forced to listen to a cutscene while there are 8 hungry robots whose mouths begin to water whenever they smell my gooch. During this cutscene, we're put into the perspective of a mechanic named Simon. We're told that we have to go into the Fredbear's building to fix some of the robots because the customers reported them to be acting aggressive. So we can gauge that this cutscene obviously takes place before the shutdown. After this cutscene, we're actually put into the perspective of this mechanic as we head inside the building to solve the problem at 5 in the morning because as an engineer, we're on call all the time, yet still get paid like dog shit and are still expected to just wake up and travel at any time, even for the smallest of reasons that could 100% wait until my fucking shift starts. But alright, let's go I guess. As we enter the building, we notice the animatronics are on for some reason, and they shouldn't be at night. We figure somebody just forgot to shut them off, so we go to the employees' room to flip the switch to power them off to take a look at them. After grabbing the key from the office and heading inside, we find that the power lever for the robots is actually already off, yet for some reason, the characters are still on. We decide to just manually shut them off to work on them instead. So we walk to the stage, reach up to turn off Spring Freddy, only to get that Soulja Boy cranked on us and get knocked the fuck out by a guy who I can only assume to be the guy we heard on the phone. We come back to playing as Thomas again, and are tasked with obviously finding a way to get the exit door unlocked. We find a key to the bathroom on the office shelf and head down the hall to go inside. Inside of the bathroom, we find a hammer that we hope we can use to break the lock on the exit door. However, as we exit the bathroom, we see the non-attractive, fat-ass version of Chica heading in our direction, so we quickly jump inside of one of the stalls to hide. We hold our breath as Chica passes by and quickly run out to the exit door. We break the handle to the door and open it, seeing the final exit door. We don't get far before Foxy jumps out at us for some fucking reason. This door was locked? Why the hell was Foxy on the other side of it? Oh well, what the fuck ever. It's a little bit more important right now that we run away from the murder robot behind us. We run back to the employee room and hide behind a shelf. Foxy walks inside, but before he can find us, he hears a noise coming from the door inside of the room. Opening it, he finds who I can only assume to be Richard and jumps him like he's in Detroit. We take this chance to book it back to the exit. As we run, we hear Richard getting torn apart, screaming. We get to the door just in time, and Jesus fucking Christ, the door is gone? What the fuck? Let's ignore the fact that this doesn't make sense, because I don't think I need to explain to you why a door disappearing doesn't make sense. We turn around to see a certain large twitching bear. He just screams in our face and disappears, clearly being a hallucination. We figure there's no better time than the present to find another exit. As we walk into the main party room, so does Spring Bonnie. And now's the time where I can talk about how he works. Spring Bonnie is as basic as it gets when it comes to a survival horror character. He patrols around the building, and if you get too close to him in his line of sight, he'll start chasing you, and he won't stop chasing you until he kills you. And there's also no chance you're going to outrun him. The only way to get him to stop chasing you without dying is to lure him to the side of the office with a door and close it. But you also really have to be careful with how you close this door, because it doesn't work how any normal FNAF door would. It only stays closed for about 2 seconds, so make sure you time this properly. Nope. Oh! I closed it! I fucking closed it! I fucking closed it! I fucking closed it! I'm dead. I'm dead as shit. If you do, Spring Bonnie should be teleported to a different room in the building. We maneuver our way around Spring Bonnie and eventually make it to the other exit of the building, only to find that the door is missing too. Isn't life just so awesome sometimes? It's at this moment we hear Richard scream, which confuses me because I thought Richard just got killed by Foxy. So if who we heard just now was Richard, then who did Foxy just kill? It couldn't have been Chris because we saw Chris get killed by the fucker in the vents. It also couldn't be Ashley because it was 100% the scream of a man. And it can't be the engineer because he entered the building in that cutscene 26 or more years ago. This is not important at all, so let's actually continue talking about what's happening, shall we? We head back to the office where we heard the scream, only to find nobody there. We figure for some reason we should go back to the employee room. Why? Ask Shitlips Thomas, because I can't figure out a good reason to go back there, but apparently he's the FNAF expert, and not me. Before we can continue, we get another engineer cutscene. We're dragged into a back room and we overhear 2 people talking. Well, really only one person talking, because the other guy has his voice changer on so deep thinking it'll make the e-girls wet, so I really can't even hear him.
Why didn't you just kill him? Really? Dave, you know exactly what happened before.
The voice I can hear sounds suspiciously like the guy on the phone who called us here at 5 in the fucking morning. He tells voice changer guy that he should just kill us so we don't get away like the other engineer and spread the word about what they're doing. After not doing it, the phone guy decides to just do it himself, so he enters the room and stabs us to death. Fantastic. I really shouldn't have lived in Chicago. Everyone in Chicago gets stabbed. Going back to the employee room, we find the corpse of a police officer. Seeing that his radio had been taken, we now know that whoever is behind this really knows what they're doing. But we figure that because a police officer went missing, that other officers will be arriving at some point to look for him. So knowing all we have to do is survive, this game's most agonizing survival section finally begins. And I get to explain what all of the characters do in grueling detail, because they're all laid on us at the exact same time, and we're just supposed to remember what they all do from the 2-minute phone call we got 15 minutes ago. Hooray. Alright, well, the goal is easy. Just survive until 6 AM without getting found by any of the animatronics. Sounds simple enough. All we have to do is track all of their movements and learn their patterns, and then find a spot in the massive 3D environment where none of the characters ever have a line of sight to, right? Almost, but not really, because one main character. Bonnie. Bonnie is this game's way of preventing you from doing exactly that. On certain time intervals, Bonnie will emerge from the room where the puppet is. Yes, by the way, the puppet is in this game. Don't think too much about it. There are a lot of characters from a lot of different FNAF time periods in this game, so just shut up. Anyways, Bonnie will exit this room and make his way to the employee room to turn the puppet control lever on. Once it's on, the puppet will begin moving on a track across the ceiling that leads to a door which has some chains on it. Why are there chains on this door? Well, it's to hold back and stop the big bastard himself, Fredbear. If the puppet makes it all the way to this door, it will break it down and allow Fredbear to come out. And spoiler alert, Fredbear always knows where you are, and if he gets out, you will 100% die, because as mentioned earlier, he doesn't care about the doors, and he is faster than you are. So, all you have to do to prevent this from happening is go into the employee room and turn off the puppet control lever whenever Bonnie turns it on. This leads to you needing to be moving around pretty consistently throughout this night. Why do that when you could just hide right outside of this room, or maybe even inside of it? Well, that's where Spring Bonnie comes back in. Spring Bonnie, and in fact every character during this section, has a very specific movement pattern that they will walk in. And thank God they do, because memorizing these patterns is the only reason I ever completed this section. Spring Bonnie has the habit of walking into literally every single room in the building, and his line of sight is really large, so you will have to always maneuver around him. Also, if that wasn't awesome enough, with every hour that passes during this section, each animatronic will become more and more agile, which really just means their line of sight increases. Chica is the next character I want to quickly mention, and she is pretty boring as a character. She's just Spring Bonnie, except her path doesn't cover as much ground as his does. Her line of sight also appears to be a lot smaller than his, so that's good news, I suppose. She does go through the main party room a bit during her cycle, and that will become important later when I go over my amazing strategy. Let's cover Freddy next, as he will probably cause you the least amount of issues out of every character in this game. Freddy will randomly spawn in random rooms, typically next to the doorways. All you have to do is not walk directly into him. He won't chase you, but if you get too close, he'll instantly kill you. So really just make sure you're watching where you're going. Mangle isn't that terrible either. Side note, I know its name in the game isn't actually Mangle, but fuck you. It looks just like her, and it crawls through the fucking vents like Mangle, so I'm calling it Mangle. Mangle is also the one that killed Chris in that cutscene earlier too, by the way. Mangle is also incredibly easy to deal with. On the floors and ceilings of certain rooms, there will be large vents. Occasionally, you may notice wires coming out from those vents. That means that Mangle is waiting there, and if you walk by, she'll snatch you up. So once again, just like Freddy, open your eyes and you'll be just fine. Foxy is the only real problem during this night, as he's a random character with no pathing, and is also super easy to forget about. Foxy has the chance to be hiding behind any doorway at any time. The only way to tell if he's there is by standing next to the doorway and listening for quiet breathing. For some reason, you can't just move to one side of the door and check if he's standing there, since you literally can't see him even if he is there, which is something I died to in my playthrough, and you can see that over on my second channel, Dxtr Black. That's really all of the problems to worry about during this night, but Bonnie is obviously the most dangerous. So, how should you go about pulling this off? Well, when this game first came out, there was a super awesome glitch you could use to cheese this entire section. If you remember where we hid from Foxy during a cutscene, you used to be able to hide in the exact same spot, and both Bonnie and Spring Bonnie, aka the only characters that enter the employee room, wouldn't be able to see you hiding there. And since it's in the employee room, it was right next to the puppet control switch, so you could beat the entire section just by standing in one spot. Unfortunately for me, I didn't get the luxury of being able to do that, as in the newer version of this game, during this section only, an invisible wall is placed there to block your path. So I had to play the legitimate way. This is when I started to develop my strategy. I'm gonna be so real with you, it took me about 45 minutes to complete this section. I am complete ass at these types of games, which is why I never play them. I personally really dislike the mechanic of every enemy is patrolling randomly and will chase you when seen, but you also have a bunch of bullshit to do at the same time. I know it's a common mechanic, but it's just never something I was able to get into. Mainly because I don't take being chased very well at all, so it just kind of gives me a lot of anxiety. Here's how this section can be beaten 100% of the time for anyone who struggles with things like this, like I do. I came up with this myself. I'm super proud of myself. I did no walkthrough because I'm the best. The first step is to run out of the employee room as fast as you can and get to the far corner of the main party room to the left of the main stage. You have to be fast because Spring Bonnie will enter this room quickly after. While in this corner, both Spring Bonnie and Bonnie will never be able to see you, which is huge since this location also gives you an easy view of both of them since they enter through the door on your left. Once in this corner, Spring Bonnie will soon pass by. After a while, Bonnie will enter the room. Bonnie is slow as shit, so this will take a while. But once you see him, you can start following him. Bonnie doesn't care so much about killing you as he does flipping the puppet switch, so you can actually get pretty close behind him. Creep, 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 creep. That's the sound I make. Creep, creep, creep. You gotta match your steps with his, bro. Boom, 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 boom. All good. But obviously, if you get too close, he'll still kill you. Once Bonnie leaves the main party room to enter the hallway, Spring Bonnie should be up near the office, so you don't have to worry about him. Take the time it takes for Bonnie to enter the employee room and flip the switch to stand by the doorway to listen for Foxy. Once Bonnie flips the switch, quickly enter the employee room and turn it off. After Bonnie flips the switch, he will exit the room through a door you can't even open, so you don't have to worry about him turning around. After flipping the switch, you want to run back to the main party room. At this point, Chica should be inside. She will walk around the tables and exit the room through the door that both Bonnies enter through. Simply be slow and follow her. Once she leaves the room, go back into the far left corner again. This is now going to begin the second cycle. This time, since the paths that Bonnie and Spring Bonnie take are much different in length, they will be a lot closer together. Bonnie will enter the room first this time, with Spring Bonnie directly behind him. Once Spring Bonnie goes up and around the tables, you can start slowly following Bonnie. At this point, you'll have to be patient, since Spring Bonnie will enter the entrance room, then travel back into the party room, and then go into the hall to the employee room. Then we'll travel to the office. So you will hear Bonnie flip the switch, and you will have to wait probably 30 to 45 seconds before you can switch it back, because if you're too fast, Spring Bonnie will see you. If you sneak past him while he's in the entrance room, it appears that Foxy will always be behind the door to the hallway and you will die. So it's your best bet to just wait for Spring Bonnie to finish this cycle and start walking to the office. I recommend waiting directly in front of the stage during this section since he won't be able to see you. Once he goes down the hall, quickly run into the employee room and flip the switch. Then quickly run back into the party room and go right into the exit doorway. Chica will be entering the party room at this point, and if you're any closer to the stage, she will see you. Once she walks around the tables, once again, you can follow her out and go back to the hiding spot in the far left corner. Now, the third cycle gets a little bit scary, so be ready. Bonnie will soon enter the room again, with Spring Bonnie fairly close behind. However, there is enough room between Bonnie and Spring Bonnie for you to be able to get in between them. Closely follow behind Bonnie and Spring Bonnie will enter the party room. Continue to follow Bonnie into the employee room and shut the switch off immediately after Bonnie turns it on. Immediately run back to the entrance of the party room. At this point, Spring Bonnie should be walking into the exit room. You can take this small window of time to run to the front of the stage. Spring Bonnie will enter the hallway, and once he does, you're safe to go back to the exit doorway. Since Spring Bonnie is near the office, you don't need to go back to the corner. In fact, you actually shouldn't, because Chica will follow behind Bonnie. Bonnie will once again pass you, and you can once again follow him into the employee room and shut the switch. After flipping this switch, this final time, you're home free. Simply sit in the employee room and this nightmare of a section will come to an end. And the best part is, since the movement of almost all of the characters is scripted, you'll be able to use this method to beat this section of the game every single time without fail. I hope you enjoyed this overtly long explanation section. It's easily what took me the longest to do while playing this game, so I figured I should devote a long time in the script talking about it. Let me know what you think. After beating this section, we get a cutscene where we're running down the hallway, being chased by Spring Bonnie. We get into the office and close the door on him, which literally cuts the fucker in half. I love this. This is peak. Absolute cinema. As we turn around, Foxy charges at us, but luckily the animatronic power gets shut off and Foxy shuts down right in front of us. Walking down the broken doors hallway, we see a deactivated Freddy, and Chica tries to kill us, only to get powered off at the same time, which actually scared me in my playthrough, which you can find on my second channel, Dxtr Black. We continue to explore the now eerily quiet building. Going back to the exit, we fall to our knees, only for a door to appear in front of us, locked by a code. A voice comes over the intercoms that sounds weirdly like the guy that killed the engineer in a previous cutscene. He tells us that he's impressed by our work and that the animatronics we faced thus far will be deactivated for the remainder of our stay, aside from 2, who he calls his favorites. It's now up to us to figure out the code. We find a piece of paper on the wall that says "Find me." Not totally sure what the hell that means. We wander around into the puppet room where we find writing on the wall saying "It's me." Next to this message, we find another piece of paper saying, "My back is to the corner." After reading this note, the 2 threats of this section activate: Fredbear and Mangle. Again, Mangle acts a bit differently, so let's talk about her first. This time, she's no longer in the vents. She's walking around the building. If she sees you, she'll roar like a dinosaur. And if you don't get out of her line of sight in 4 seconds, she'll start chasing you. And she won't stop until she catches you. So just like, run, I guess, bozo. Fredbear, on the other hand, should be scary, but because of an item we got at the beginning of this segment, he really isn't. At the start of this section, we're given a taser. Fredbear will always know where you are and will constantly be crip walking towards you, except Fredbear while walking is very slow, so you can easily stay away from him. Every once in a while, he will also roar for some reason, and will then begin to charge at you. While he's charging, he will be faster than you, but when he gets close, use your taser to stun him and he'll go back to walking. So avoiding the threats on this segment is honestly a cakewalk compared to what we had to deal with during the last section. Now, I had a stroke trying to figure out what "my back is to the corner" meant. What you have to do is find Freddy, since his back is to the corner of the wall. Except not really, because his back is just to the wall, not really the corner. Regardless, on his back is another note stating camera 2. I've neglected to mention the cameras thus far, but that's because they're literally completely useless for the most part. Throughout the building, there are several monitor stands where you can place your monitor, because I guess you can't just hold a fucking iPad with your hands. You instead need a holder like a toddler who blares annoying ass YouTube videos while in a public restaurant, and the parents just find nothing wrong with that since they'd rather have the internet raise them instead of them. Anyways, when you place the monitor down, you can look at the cameras. Big whoop. Using your eyes is better in a game like this because you can walk around freely. Regardless, looking at camera 2 now, we find another message saying, "I'm here." Going to the location of camera 2, you'll find another note saying, "Look up." On the ceiling, you'll find the number 7 and yet another note reading "Inside my head." What this means, if you weren't a genius like me, is that you have to go to Foxy in the office and look in his mouth. Inside, you'll find the number 3 and another note reading "Behind a curtain." Now, there are 3 curtains in this building, and you have to look at each of them in a specific order, which is dumb because all you're doing is looking behind them. Behind the last curtain, you'll see the number 7, and then some text reading "The safest place" will start flashing on your screen. Let's pause. I really don't understand why it wasn't just another note. This is supposed to be like an escape room set up by the guy that locked us in here. How the fuck was he able to make us hallucinate a phrase? I don't know. Let's move on. The safest place refers to the office. Going back to the office, we find another note reading "the second digit." Obviously, the second digit is the number 3, as it's the second digit we found on this little scavenger hunt. Finally, going back to the exit door, we can type in the code 6373. Fun fact, by the way, you can actually just type in this code at the start of this section if you don't want to go through all the bullshit I just explained, because there's no check here to see if you have or not. But after punching in the code, the door disappears. Opening another door that it was covering leads to another room with no fucking door. Falling to our knees again, all of a sudden the door reappears for some reason, and a bunch of police officers barge in past us, and we're taken out of the building to safety. After being rescued, we're shown a cutscene where Thomas is either being interviewed by police or is in a therapy session. I can't quite tell which one is correct. He freaks out about his friends being killed and then realizes he never heard anything from Ashley. No screams, no body found, nothing. This makes him tweak like when I'm in line at the grocery store and some 40-year-old mom pulls out her own grocery bags to save the environment. You want to know what I do when I see someone using their own bags in the grocery store? When it's my turn in line, I tell the bagger, hey, all my shit, double bag it. Anyways, after this cutscene, we're thrown into the credits. But that's not where this game comes to an end. We actually get a post-credit scene like it's a Marvel movie, where Thomas is in his room. He wakes up in the middle of the night and looks out his window, only to see the silhouette of an animatronic we never saw in the pizzeria staring back at him. And finally, Fredbear and Friends Reboot comes to a close. Overall, I think this game was a super enjoyable experience. Did I get overtly frustrated and almost give up while playing the survival section? Yes, but I beat it, and I'm glad I did. The story to this game is simple and nice. There's no retarded digging that we have to do to learn the simplest things like a fucking name of a character, Scott, asshole. We're instead just given a story the way it should be given. A few mysteries here and there, but nothing so overtly frustrating that it makes it not fun to figure out. The game looks gorgeous, it plays well when you understand what you're doing, and overall I would highly recommend you give it a go. Obviously, from the teaser we saw at the end of the game, a second game was clearly in the works. But with no updates for several years, and it being confirmed that at some point the game's development was put on halt, and given the fact that this game came out 7 years ago, I don't think it's very likely we'll see Chapter 2 anytime soon. But hey, only time will tell. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with me, or do you think this game was actually doo-doo ass rank? If you are at all familiar with my channel and how my skills are when it comes to 5 Nights at Freddy's fan games, then you'd know that I'm incredibly bad at playing these games. Some may even call it a skill issue. I'm not sure what's wrong with me, but when it comes to being able to focus and complete high nerve control tasks like FNAF games, I tend to just completely drop the ball harder than my actual balls dropped. But today, I've managed to find a well-known FNAF fan game that I was actually able to 100% complete. After doing so, I was so incredibly proud of myself, I knew I had to make a video talking all about it. Typically, when it comes to FNAF games that I make videos about, I play through as much of them as I can, and when I find a night that I tend to struggle on, I'll pour at least an hour of attempts into it, whereafter, if I continue to fail, I will switch to watching someone else play the game and continue to take notes for the script. This game, however, was not like that, and the game in question is Baby's Nightmare Circus. So buckle up and get ready for me to glaze myself, because this is one of the few times in my life where I'm allowed to be happy with myself. Let's dive together into the world of Baby's Nightmare Circus. Baby's Nightmare Circus opens to a black screen and a cutscene. Someone is talking to us, but we're not yet sure who it is. We know we're trapped somewhere, and this voice says that they can help us get out. But first we have to beat the game. Afterwards, we get thrown into the menu and click play. This is already where I want to stop and make a comment. After pressing play, rather than just throwing you into a night like a normal FNAF game does, this game brings you to a separate screen where you're able to see how many nights the game has in store for you, and as you beat the nights, others will unlock, sort of allowing you to pick a path when it comes to nights. It's very loose, but I'll talk more about it as it opens up. The first night of the game is a tutorial night, something I don't really see other games doing. In this tutorial night, it is impossible to lose as there are no enemies that are actually active. In this night, you're free to roam around the circus, and as you enter tents, the game will tell you who will appear in them and how to deal with them. After you've visited every tent, you'll be able to exit the night. But before we do that, I think this would be a perfect time to go over all of the animatronics that this tutorial mentions. It only seems fitting. I'm going to be splitting up the circus into 2 halves for this section, the front and the back. The front will refer to the direction you face by default as you enter the game, this side, and the back as the side you have to turn to, this side. Let's start with the main attraction, shall we? Nightmare Baby.
Hell no, man. What the fuck, man?
Nightmare Baby resides in the left tent on the front side of the circus. Throughout the night, she will attempt to escape the tent and rip you wide open. Now, while that may sound enticing, you need to remember that her name is Circus Baby, and that you're not into minors because you're a normal person. Get it together. There's another character you can goon over in this game that I'll cover in a minute. Keep it in your pants. In order to prevent your splitting in half, you'll need to occasionally check on Nightmare Baby's tent and flash your light to see where she's at. In this tent, she has 4 possible states. The first state will have you see nothing when you flash your light. The second state will have her duck behind that thing. I think it's a stage. I'm not sure. The third state will have her duck behind a curtain, and you'll notice she's a bit close to you then, and a little bit more than you'd care for. And the fourth and final state is where she's all up in your face, breathing really hard and causing you to catch whiffs of the most rancid breath you've ever smelled. When you see Baby quite literally 3 inches away from your face, all you need to do is quickly run out of the tent. I personally like to run back into the tent and make sure she actually left. I don't know if you need to do this, I just know that one time I didn't and I died. You might be thinking, wow, that's really easy. What's the catch? Well, you want to know the best part? There isn't one. Yeah. You're soon gonna see why I was able to actually complete this FNAF game. Staying on the front side of the circus, we enter the right side tent to find the 3 Biddy Babs. What do these guys do? Throughout the night, they will assemble like the Avengers and occasionally cause your flashlight to flicker. How on earth are they doing that to your flashlight even when you're several hundred yards away from them? How about don't fucking question it, dweeb? How about that, huh? When you notice your lights start to flicker, you will need to quickly make your way over to their tent and flash your light at them until they behave and stop. But what else do they do? Nothing. That's it. You literally never have to check on them unless your light is flickering. This game is buttfuck easy. If you're bad at these types of games but still want to play one and feel talented, Baby's Nightmare Circus is for you. Once you understand how every character works, which isn't hard, losing will become impossible. Turning around to the back of the circus, starting with the right tent, we have a very interesting character. That character being absolutely fucking nobody, because there's no animatronic in here. Instead, it's just a music box system which powers Bellora's song. She dances to it throughout the night, so we have to make sure we keep it wound up. Speaking of Bellora, heading over to the left tent is where she is. This tall glass of water looking ass will spin around in a circle on her stage. All you have to do is watch her. Literally. This is perfect for you freaks. You get paid to goon. And no, I'm not kidding. That's literally all you have to do. You'll see on the bottom of your screen a meter. It will fill up the longer you look at her and will decrease if you're not looking at her. And with Bellora out of the way, that's literally all of the characters and all of the threats in the game. I'm not joking. What? Huh? What's that? Does your flashlight at least have a power system to prevent you from easily cheesing everything ever? Oh, no. No, it doesn't. That would be too difficult. How does this game sound, guys? You might be wondering why I'm even covering it if there isn't a mechanic that's mildly annoying for me to point at and say, this motherfuck fucking sucks, fuck shit, fuck ass shit, fuck bitch. Well, I promise that there's something interesting about this game. And if you can stick it out with me to the end, you'll see what I'm talking about. As I stated previously, there are multiple different nights, but calling them levels and minigames makes much more sense. The 3 main levels are called the easy way, the medium way, and the hard way. That last one being a reference to my nards. All 3 are pretty boring and are just a slightly more difficult version of the last. You may find yourself getting a little stuck on the medium way, however, and to counter that, let me tell you the god strategy that will make completing these nights 100% possible every single time. Okay, so the night starts. Here's what you're gonna do. Immediately turn around and go check on Bellora until her meter is full. Then go over to the music box and yank on its crank. Next, you'll go back over to Bellora and fill her up again. Pause. And finally, you'll turn around and check Baby's location. If at any point you see the lights flicker, stop what you're doing and flash the Biddy Babs, and check on Baby again before you turn around to go goon to Bellora. Repeat this pattern and congratulations, you've mastered Baby's Nightmare Circus. There's quite literally nothing more you need to do. Something you will notice incredibly quickly while playing this game is that most, if not all, characters are dealt with by looking at them. which, by the way, is the exact same mechanic as another disgusting FNAF game I'll be covering in the near future. Want to know one more super cool thing about the main gameplay loop here? No? Well, too bad. I'm going to tell you anyway. I personally have never had the Biddy Babs attack more than twice in a night, and usually they only ever attacked once, and that was right at the start of the night. I'm not sure if this is a bug or if they seriously were meant to rarely attack, but goddamn is this game easy. But let's take a short break from the main gameplay loop to talk about the 3 mini-games in this game: Mini Arena Rules, Bonbon Rules, and Bonnet Rules. Let's start with Mini Arena Rules, as it will be the first one you're able to access. Mini Arena Rules consists of 3 tents. This minigame is pretty similar to the plush trap minigame from FNAF 4 in a way. Mini Arena can appear at any of the 3 tents, and you will have to perform a different action depending on which one she's at. I'm gonna give you a small spoiler here and say that every single minigame is exactly the same. The only difference between them is which tents have which actions, and which character is trying to kill you in each game. I don't need to go over each game and waste your time, so I'll quickly go over the 3 actions. For one of the tents, you have to just hold your flashlight on them. The second tent requires you to flash them with your flashlight several times. And the third tent has you scratch your ass and not even bother turning your flashlight on. No, I'm not joking. It's really that easy. How do you know when they're there? Well, you can't just flash your light anytime you want because they will kill the fuck out of you. But lucky for us, the characters will always make a very noticeable sound cue when they've entered a tent. When you hear that, you just turn your light on to see which tent they're at and then respond accordingly. At the beginning of the minigame, the game will tell you which tent corresponds to which action. So whoopity-doo, these minigames are really just time wasters. Let's talk about the next interesting night called Fun Times. Oh boy, I wonder what interesting and unique mechanics will appear on this night. Fucking nothing! It's the same mechanics as the last 3 nights, just with different characters. Instead of Nightmare Baby, you have Nightmare Funtime Freddy. Ballora is replaced with Nightmare Funtime Foxy, and the Biddy Babs are replaced with nothing because it's just the Biddy Babs again.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Could have at least swapped them out with Electro Babs. That way, them being able to mess with your flashlight would actually make a little bit of sense, but no, whatever, that's fine. How about difficulty? Is this night any harder? No. No, it isn't. You can beat this night just as easily as the previous nights using the God strategy I mentioned earlier. Well, it looks like there's one more night. What could it be? Fun Times 2. Well, okay, is there anything different about— Why are you even fucking asking a stupid ass question like that? Have you not been watching the video? No, there's nothing different about it. I was prepared for this night to be significantly harder than the last, but it wasn't, not even a little bit. There are so many conceivable ways to fix this game and make it a little bit more interesting. The first thing I can think of is giving the flashlight power. That would make this game worlds harder. And to be clear, I don't believe difficulty is what makes a game good, but this game is so easy, you seriously don't even have to focus on it. While I was playing this game, most of the time I was telling random stories or ranting about something random, which you can hear if you watch my playthrough series over on Dxtr Black. Go subscribe, by the way. It's miles behind this channel in subscribers, and I think that's really sad. If you like this channel, then you'll like that one too. But now I promise something a little different is going to happen in this game. We've unlocked a level called N Night. If you couldn't figure out what that means, it's just a night with Ennard in it. How does it play? Well, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is it's not the same setup as the previous levels, so you can't just use the God strategy. However, the bad news is this is arguably the easiest level in the entire game. No joke. It's easy as fuck. Let me explain it to you. So, Ennard will appear at random in any of the 4 tents. When he goes to one, he will make a sound to hint at which tent he entered. If he's in Ballora's tent, you'll be able to hear faint music. If he's in the music box tent, you'll be able to hear the crank. If he's in the Biddy Babs tent, your flashlight will start to flicker. And if he's in Baby's tent, you'll hear him grunting, I think? I don't really know what that sound is that he's making in there. Once you know which tent he's in, you'll have to quickly go to said tent and rapidly flash your flashlight at him until he goes away. That's it. Nothing else. No Biddy Babs, no Ballora, no music box, no Baby. just entered moving around. To give him some credit, he moves around pretty quickly, so you'll be running around a lot, but by no means is this level hard in the slightest. But something else interesting about this night is the reward you get for beating it. Rewards are something I've neglected to mention thus far, and that's because they're not really important at all, until now. To quickly go over everything, beating the easy way gives you a gold coin, beating the medium way gives you a silver coin, not sure why you get a worse coin for beating a more difficult night, but fuck it, right? Beating the hard way gives you a golden baby head, don't get any fucked up ideas, you freaks. Fun Times gives you a golden Freddy head, Fun Times Round 2 gives you a fun time portrait of Foxy and Freddy about to make out, Mini Arena Rules gives you a golden Nightmare Arena, again, no funny ideas. Bon Bon Rules gives you a Bon Bon doll, which is adorable. Bonnet Rules gives you a golden bonnet head, and as I already mentioned, At Night gives you a mysterious key. This key will be important, but I'll get more into it later when it becomes more relevant. The final level that unlocks after beating At Night is Baby Geist Attacks. That sounds really fun and difficult. I can't wait to hear about it. I hear you saying, well, shut the fuck up, because it's not hard and I wouldn't exactly call it fun either. Baby Geist Attacks is pretty much just a reskinned At Night with a few differences. The biggest being that Baby Geist doesn't make noise to tell you which tent she's entered. That sounds scary, but all you need to do is spin around in a circle and check every tent one by one. You probably won't lose if you do this, and if you do lose, it's just sheer luck. The only other change is that the flashlight doesn't beat her. Instead, on this night, you're given a taser to administer a controlled shock. This taser has a cooldown, so don't use it unless you see Baby Geist. When you find her, all you have to do is use the taser, and she'll move to another tent. Do this until 6 AM, and congrats, you've beaten the game. After completing Baby Geist Attacks, another cutscene plays. The voice from the beginning of the game reveals itself to be a balloon boy-looking son of a bitch named Biddy. He congratulates us on removing Baby Geist from the game, but says that it will always come back. Crazy, because I didn't see William Afton anywhere, so you're really just stealing his line, but I suppose I'll let it slide. The prize for beating this level is Baby Geist's endoskeleton, and this is also where you learn that this game has multiple endings, with the game displaying that we've unlocked the Baby Geist ending, getting a star on the title screen. Alright boys, time to go hunting. The next ending involves that key that we got from At Night. After obtaining it, if you go back to At Night and head over to the music box tent, you'll be able to see a chest with a keyhole in it. You can use the key on the chest to unlock it, which stops the night and causes a cutscene to play. Biddy tells us we can open the chest, but it's useless and won't help with our sanity. The contents of the chest are just a mutilated Foxy plush that doesn't do anything. I'm sure it has some form of symbolism, but from what I've read, nobody knows what that would be. The final ending I have to talk about is called the Broken Ending, and getting it is a bit more interesting than the other two. Every time you die, there's a chance of you getting an item called What Is This? Trust me, getting this item isn't the easiest, since dying in this game is pretty hard if you couldn't tell. When you interact with this item in the prize corner, it will tell you that you can break the game by finding a red line and holding the keys on your keyboard to the letters in the name Biddy. By entering any of the normal levels and turning around, you'll be able to see a faint red line in the sky. If you hold down those letters and click the line, the game will freak the fuck out, and an 8-bit minigame will begin. You'll see an 8-bit version of Biddy on your screen, and clicking him will cause him to melt, and several more will appear on screen afterwards. After committing Biddy genocide, the Destroy Him minigame will begin. Biddy will start spinning in a circle, and you'll have to click him multiple times, with him becoming faster and faster the more you click him. After beating him, a distorted version of his face will appear, and the player will notice they're stuck inside their own broken mind. By the way, if you want a quick lore dump, the player in the game got stuck inside of his own game and he's trying to get out. Pretty simple. And with that, that's all Baby's Nightmare Circus has to offer. There's actually one pretty large segment I neglected to mention, that being Classic Mode. After beating Baby Geist Attacks, you'll be able to unlock Classic Mode, one last chance for the developer to escape the game. Classic Mode looks similar to a normal FNAF game, and the first night would have you think that it is. Night 1 plays normal. With characters coming to your doors, you can check cameras and close the doors whenever they get too close. It's not too hard because it's only night 1, and upon trying to enter night 2, Biddy shows himself. He says he doesn't want these last 5 nights to be a boring FNAF game. He says he's going to remove the doors. Fun fact about night 1, it's actually impossible to lose. Even if you close the doors the entire night, the power drops at a constant rate. Night 1 is completely scripted, so losing can't happen. Just something fun to note. And beating night 1 will give you some gold coins. Night 2 starts in a backstage-like area where you have to go back and forth staring at different animatronics, with Freddy getting a bit too close at times. After doing this for a bit, you'll get jump scared by Biddy, and then night 2 actually begins. At this point, you'll be placed in a vent with Funtime Foxy as your main threat. You'll have to slowly crawl forward and listen for Foxy crawling around. When you hear him, you need to stop moving. Once his banging stops, you can keep moving. Incredibly easy, but something cool is that halfway through you'll be able to see Foxy's eye. Just a nice little touch that I thought was pretty sick. After beating night 2, you'll be given a Funtime Foxy doll, which is just adorable. Night 3 is my favorite of the 5 nights in classic mode. You're placed in front of a shelf, and you'll have to make sure that several Biddy Babs don't see you. You'll be able to see their eyes peering at you, and you'll have to move different objects on the shelf in order to block their vision of you until the night ends. It's not hard by any means, but I just thought this night was really fun. Beating night 3 will give you a Golden Nightmare Biddy Bab statue. Night 4 is unironically the hardest moment in this entire game, but not for the reason you'd think. It starts with you in an office similar to FNAF 6. After turning on the computer, you'll be greeted with 3 buttons: a camera button, a ventilation button, and a let's play button. On the cameras, you'll be able to see Ennard and Baby Geist moving around. The cameras are useless, by the way, and serve no purpose as they're not actually moving around any map. The ventilation is what really matters. Throughout the night, it will decrease, and you'll have to constantly check it and keep winding it up. I don't know why the ventilation is like a music box, but just don't think about it, I guess. The Let's Play button is what is actually important. The minigame here is just Pong, but you control both paddles. Every time the ball hits a paddle, you'll get a point. After you reach 40 points, you'll be redirected to a new minigame. And this new minigame is the reason this night is the hardest. This new minigame is similar to a bullet hell, where you have to move your player up and down to avoid obstacles approaching you. It starts off pretty easy, with several Balloras dancing towards you. After a bit, they start to rotate, definitely a little more challenging, but still nothing hard. Then, out of fucking nowhere, the screen starts to shift up. And this is why this night is so hard. This section is so disorienting, because not only do the Balloras scroll, your player scrolls as well. And right when it happens, you'll be holding up to avoid a Ballora. But then the screen will start pushing you up as you're holding up, causing you to move right into Ballora's ass, which isn't unappealing, but I'm trying to beat the game right now, not beat my meat. This minigame isn't literally super hard, but it's mildly frustrating enough for me to feel the need to mention it. I did not have a lot of fun with this section, and you can see my salt over on the Dxtr Black channel. After the fuckhead Balloras, you'll have a few lol bits to dodge, and after that, you're home free, and you will get an old TV as a reward. Night 5 begins with Biddy telling you there's actually no way to escape and that he's been lying to us this whole time. We get so pissed we actually start punching the fuck out of him, which I think is hilarious and totally deserved. After a large enough beating, he transforms into Nightmare Biddy, and we learn that the final night is a battle against him. Can you guess how you beat him? If you said your flashlight, you'd be unsurprisingly correct. You'll be placed back into the office you saw on night 1, but with no cameras and no doors. To be fair, he did say he was gonna get rid of your doors, so I guess he's not a complete liar. Your goal on this night is to deplete his power using a panel in your office. When you press the deplete button, it will very slowly drain Biddy's power. He'll be attacking you the whole time. You'll be able to hear him making noise in one of your ears, which is a level of ASMR I was never ready for. I see. What the fuck is he saying? Goes on crack. When you hear him on a side of your room, you'll have to peek out of the door on that side and flash him with your flashlight to keep him away. Do this until the power is depleted, and congrats, you've beaten Biddy. You're given a book with his face on it, and the game seemingly comes to a close. But judging by the word seemingly, I'm sure you know we're not done yet. Going to the prize corner, you can actually look inside the book and see every character you've gone up against in classic mode, with the exception of one grayed out silhouette we haven't seen before. Clicking on that page throws you into one final boss fight with Mr. Afton. Oh shit, I guess he does always come back. This fight, while unique, also isn't hard like the rest of the game. In this fight, you'll be back in the office again. This time, you'll have your doors and your cameras, which are actually useful this time around. If you ever see Afton in one of your hallways, you'll have to quickly, and I do mean quickly, close the doors until he leaves. This is the only difficult part of this boss fight. The speed you have to have, it isn't anything crazy like some other FNAF games, but for this game, it's incredibly noticeable. The only other place Afton can be seen is in your vents. If you see him there, you'll just have to stare at him on the cameras until he leaves. That can get scary because of your power situation, but I've got a small theory about that. I don't think your power can run out. I honestly believe that your power decreases at a constant rate like it does in Night 1. I never lost due to running out of power, so that's something I can't confirm. But let me know your guys' experience with it in the comments. After beating Mr. Afton, the game pretty much is over. We have 3 more prizes to collect though, and these can be collected in 2 hidden minigames. The final prize you get from unlocking all the prizes. The first minigame can be found on Night 2. Instead of moving forward in the vents, you can hold S to move backwards. Once you move your character off screen, you'll be thrown into a minigame where all you have to do is walk forward and collect a plushie. That plushie being the prize that gets added to the prize corner. But before collecting it, you'll notice a shelf that looks oddly familiar. It's the same shelf that's on Night 3. You'll need to take note of the order that the objects are placed on this shelf. On Night 3, while defending yourself from the Biddy Babs, you'll have to arrange the different items on the shelf in the same order you saw them in the minigame. I recommend just taking a picture of it like I did. After doing so, you'll be thrown into another minigame where you also just walk around and grab a plushie. After doing so, you'll unlock the final prize, which is just a picture of multiple locations you've seen throughout the game. And with that, you've officially 100%ed Baby's Nightmare Circus, and that's all the game has to offer. And with that, that's all I have to offer about the game as well. I loved playing this game. Yes, it's not hard or particularly interesting, but I think of it as a casual FNAF experience and a fandom full of some of the most challenging experiences you'll ever take part in, and I can appreciate that. If you have the thought in your head that the creator of this game isn't very good at making FNAF games, I want you to get that thought out of your head right now. This guy knows what he's doing. In case you were interested, the guy that made Baby's Nightmare Circus also created one of the best Five Nights at Freddy's games of all time, Tyke & Sons Lumber Co. That game is literally some of the coolest shit I've ever seen in my life, and if you want to see me cover it, let me know in the comments. Mixlass is a very talented creator and is capable of creating challenging gameplay. Hell, the hardest challenge in Tyke & Sons Lumber Co. is number 48 on the FNAF Max Mode list, which is nothing to scoff at. But let me know what you think. Do you like the overall simplicity of Baby's Nightmare Circus? Let me know in the comments. The question for my Garten of Banban 0 video was, are you excited for Garten of Banban 8 and why? My favorite answer was none of them because nobody answered the fucking question. Thanks guys, maybe you'll answer this one. The question of this video is, who is your favorite FNAF fan game developer and why? With the question of the video being asked, I've been Dxtr, and I'll see you all in the next video. See ya!